Minnetrista City Council meeting for August 6th. Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming, and thank you for those watching on YouTube at a later date. First of all, I'd like to ask that you join me in Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So with that, I'm going to make a few introductions. I'm Lisa Whalen, I'm the mayor, and to my left are council members Pam Mortenson, Mike Molitor, Shannon Bruce, and John Tschumperlin. Next to John, we have our city engineer with WSB, Paul Hornby, and then on the end, we have our city clerk, Kris Linquist, our public works superintendent, Gary Peters, and then also right behind Gary, we have our administrative assistant, Cassandra Tabor, and then we have, I'm sure that's not your correct title, I always get it wrong. And then next to me, on my right, we have our city administrator, Mike Barone, finance director, Brian Grimm, David Abel is our community development director, and then with Kennedy and Graven, our city attorney is Ron Batty, and then on the end, we have our chief of police, Paul Falls. So with that, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented, or are there any changes?
I'd like to suggest that we move items 6A to 6F and move the others up.
Okay. We can do that. We do have some people here tonight for that discussion. I don't want to keep them too late, so we should be able to do that.
Okay.
All right. With that, are there any other changes? Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. So next, just quick reminder, if you have electronic devices, cell phones, please turn them on airplane mode or on silent. I forgot to say that earlier. So next, special presentations. We have a couple, and this evening we have Jeanne Brustad with the Gillespie Center, and she's going to give us an update. Thank you, Ms. Brustad, for coming, and looking forward to hearing all about it.
First, I'll apologize for missing the June meeting, and then I will start. I'm Jeanne Brustad. I'm the past president of the board of Gillespie Center, and I want to thank you for giving us a few minutes to remind you what the Gillespie Center offers to the community, and to thank you for your contributions. We are a facility that was built in 2001 and have been successfully providing a service and a facility for those 17 years without a mortgage. We are technically a senior center, but we consider ourselves a community center. First, let's talk about the community of Minnetrista. As you can see, the present and the very near future seniors of Minnetrista make up over 40% of the population of the city. And it is with this knowledge that you should feel very good about your contribution each year on the contract in helping to ensure that there is a future senior center. There will be an active one for activities for years to come. The Gillespie Center has partnered with Senior Community Services of Hennepin County to enrich our programs and opportunities. The Senior Community Services, known as SCS, offers several types of programs in our community. One is the home program, which helps provide house and outside maintenance for the elderly. Another program is care, which enables seniors to get the medical care they need by bridging the financial gap between their medical bills and their Medicare coverage. A third program is the Senior Outreach Caregiver Services provided by Marian Danielson, who has an office at the Gillespie Center, and she's able to help families with planned transitional care questions as people age. Another program is Medicare and Health Insurance Counseling provided by volunteer Chuck Radke, who helps with one-on-one help for seniors and their caregivers as they make the best choices for Medicare and Medicare Part D plans. Mindy Anderson is our center director, and we contract her with SCS. Because of this relationship, Mindy is able to attend conferences, workshops, and develops relationships with other senior center directors. With this collaborative, we are able to expand our programs for our members. The second picture is when Mindy was one of the 12,000 volunteers during the Super Bowl week. Remember how cold it was? She volunteered to be outside. Let me introduce our new president, Blake Angleton. We have two main managing groups at the center, a Gillespie board, which essentially works with the financial condition of the center and the decisions that involve the resources of our facility. We manage the endowment fund, the facility, and how it runs as it ages, and other matters that involve the finances. This group consists of members as well as people from the community. We strive to have a member from each of our contributing cities on this board. The second main group of our facility is the Advisory Council. This group manages and deals with the planning and organizing of the activities that happen at the center, as well as manage the membership list, work with finding volunteers for the various projects, and fundraising activities that are planned. Each day begins with a volunteer at the front desk. This is a volunteer manning the front desk from 8 every morning until 4 every afternoon, Monday through Friday. There is also a volunteer at the front desk on Saturday from 8:30 to 10:30, helping with the bakery shelves and the visitors. These volunteers are the first face that most visitors see when they enter the facility. They can answer questions that visitors may have, sign people up for the activities, memberships, give tours of the facility, register for our out-of-area trips, and meals that are planned for the center. Another thing that happens every morning, our coffee group. Several members of the community gather from 8:30 to 10:30 just to have a cup of coffee and maybe a roll or a muffin. They talk, they giggle, they tease, but the most important thing they do, they keep track of each other and make sure they're all okay, especially those members of this group that live alone. They feed the birds and they enjoy an incredible camaraderie. We have the usual activities that most senior centers have. Card games, exercise groups, several activity clubs with just a few listed here. Photography club, various card clubs, craft club, knitting, crocheting, painting group, new groups added and changed all the time as the need arises. We also take trips to various places in our community as well as surrounding areas. Casino trips are very popular. Keeping fit is very important to seniors as well as other community members. We have several different exercise groups, and during the warm season, a walking group. We also have line dancing as well as yoga. These groups are open to anyone in the community as well as members. Keeping fit also includes square dancing at the Gillespie Center. One night a week, actually, it's usually Monday, volunteers come to enjoy square dancing together and also provide time for lessons for a new person from the community that wants to learn the art of square dancing. These are all free. People that enjoy sing in our Gillespie singing group. There is more than a choir. They put on shows, including costumes, themes, and lots of giggles. They perform for other facilities in the area, and they practice almost every Thursday. As you know, we have only one full-time paid staff member, our director, plus 2 part-time staff members, our rental coordinator, Wendy Bain, and our maintenance guy, Greg Slatton, who also does the cooking on Wednesdays. Without volunteers, the Gillespie Center could not function. We have volunteers that take care of the gardens, the carpets, the thousands of eggs that the children in St. Bonnie search for, provided by the firefighters of St. Bonnie, are filled by our volunteers. Volunteers cook meals that we serve to the school sport banquets. Volunteers run all of the various fundraising activities we have. And as you can see by the pictures, this often includes working with food. And we have so many volunteers that help with our activities that include food. But we have volunteers that help with membership lists and mailing of our newsletter. We have volunteers that sell our script gift cards, organize and run our fundraisers, move tables, chairs, and other equipment for our activities and rental programs. And that list can go on. Several thousand hours of volunteer time are donated by our members. It isn't just seniors that are our volunteers. High school students often come and help with the setup and working with cleaning the tables for the meals or helping with other activities that we have. We pride ourselves in our community involvement. We participate in the Spirit of the Lake celebration every July with a bingo night, pork dinner. We have displays at the park, and we enjoy being in the parade. We provide volunteers for the Tour de Tonka rest stop in Mound just last weekend. We also coordinate with our local organizations, including the Hennepin County Library in Mound for story time, and we helped with a fundraiser for weekend. We host a table at Minnetrista Day to show the residents of Minnetrista what all happens at the Gillespie Center, and each year we get new interest from that table. Renting out our facility for various activities is also one of our functions. Both the Lions and the JCs have a space in our facility where they store some of their supplies for their activities. We have rented out the facility excuse me, for anniversary parties, family and class reunions, sports banquets, Ridgeview Hospital meeting and conference events, and other various groups for meeting or gatherings of the members. However, the largest rentals are weddings, where the facility takes on a look of luxury and puts the facility in a different look, and celebrations of life, where an open house is held and the space is large enough for people to come and share their stories. Hidden treasure is often considered one of our hidden secrets. In our lower level, we have 1,000 gently used articles of clothing, furniture, jewelry, home decor, and all sorts of gift ideas. This is available every Wednesday from 10 to 3, and it's manned by volunteers that help keep the space organized and welcoming to shoppers. It's like a garage sale every Wednesday. We serve a meal every Wednesday at noon. Probably the highlight of those Wednesdays is the third Wednesday of every month. Musicians from all over the state join together to jam. They provide various types of music for the audience, following by a great meal. These musicians are volunteers that simply enjoy playing music, singing together, and having a great day. We've had groups as large as 150 come for these Wednesday country jam days. And for only $5, you can get a great meal to add to the enjoyment. Obviously, we do a lot of fundraising to raise funds to put into our endowment fund. We host dinner parties where we have professional musicians come to entertain us. Sometimes these are volunteers, as the jazz group led by Tim Mulcroney in this picture. We also hire entertainment for some of these events. We host a golf tournament, a 10-day holiday boutique, and we sell script cards. Just some of our fundraising activities, all run by volunteers. We host a Christmas holiday event for youth in our community to come and purchase gifts for their parents and grandparents. Santa is there, and children of all ages come to have their pictures taken with Santa. Keeping in the holiday spirit, we also host an ugly sweater contest. 7 days a week, a volunteer from the Gillespie Center goes to Cub Foods around 7 in the morning to pick up their day-old baked goods and bring them to the center. Community members may pick up these baked goods for a donation to the center. This helps the center with providing a service to the community and also helps with our fundraising. Entertainment and providing something unique and different activities is a goal of our center director. We have programs that help with planning funerals, book signings for new books written by community members, talks about investments and how to handle them, information from other organizations talking about learning new topics, including having the superintendent of schools come to help us keep us informed of what is happening in the school district, and providing space for someone from the city to keep us informed about what's happening on the roads in the area. This list of programs changes every year and keeps our community informed and entertained. We are constantly looking for program ideas from the community and our members to keep them active and involved. We have a free lending library manned by a volunteer. Community members are able to come and check out a book or several. These are donated books and organized by topic and authored by our volunteer. You see just one small wall of three walls of books in our ever-changing list of books available. This community is a healthy place, and there are several in our large community that are over 100 years old, including my mother. That's just one reason to have a senior center, and we want to thank you for helping in funding our center's expenses so we can help raise funds to continue to grow our endowment funds. Your city's participation in the funding contract helps us to know that we have a cushion to use to continue the vibrant facility we presently have, and we thank you. You, Minnetrista, are helping create a city to live in for the present as well as the future, and we again thank you. Are there questions?
Very thorough, so I don't think, no. Any questions? There are none, so again, very thorough, a nice presentation. Thank you very much, Ms. Brustad, for doing
Thank
this,
you.
taking your time. Thank
It
you.
was my pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we'll move on to our next special presentations, and that is our water tower discussion. I believe, Mr. Barone, you're going to start us off there?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. So this could be a rather long discussion, so I thought I would make a point of introducing who's going to speak tonight. This is generally the order that we'll follow here tonight. We have our engineers, both Miles Jensen and Chad Katzenberger from SEH. They're going to kind of give a short summary of kind of where we've come so far in the process to find a location for a water tower. Talk a little bit about that. And then we have our two fire chiefs that serve our community, both Shane Weber from St. Bonifatius and Greg Peterson from Mounder here. He's got a short PowerPoint to talk a little bit about water tower since it's situated in the St. Bonnie Fire District. And then Gary Peters from Public Works will talk a little bit about the needs related to his area, and then I'll summarize as well with some items based on the growth projections and the growth where we've come in the last 5-6 years thereabouts. So we hope to keep this moving. I know we had our council member Bruce, who submitted a list of questions at our last council meeting 3 weeks ago in July. And what I hope to see happen is as we go through the presentations by each one of these groups, the engineers, the fire chiefs, etc. Hopefully those questions will get answered. If they don't, at the end of the presentation, you can certainly, touch on anything you don't feel got answered. So we want to be thorough in that regard. I think tonight's presentation will hopefully set the stage for when we need to build this tower, and maybe not where, but when we need to build the tower. So if you don't mind, I'll start now with both Miles and Chad, and we have their PowerPoint that they brought to us in June. They're not going to go through it again, but maybe touch on a few things that kind of got us to this point. So Miles, Chad, if you guys want to take over.
Thank you. Madam Mayor and Council, staff, it's a pleasure to be back to help with this discussion of the water tower. And what we decided to do was have our part be just kind of summary of what we had done before. So why not use the same presentation? Just going to hit on some of the slides that we've seen more times in the past. This one here is depicts water storage needs in the future in the south zone, and two different ways that engineers would size a water tower for the total amount of stored water. One way, if you recall, one way is average day demand, and that is depicted by the blue line, and on the x-axis that's years, and on the y-axis is just the amount of storage, and then the years that would represent the amount of the growth in population, and then the gray line is another way of calculating it, where it's half of average day demand, and then 2 hours for firefighting, and Chad will get into that in a little bit, and then 15% of max day for operations. And we have a chart that we can share down the road here. So if you recall, we had talked about a couple of different sites, 5 different sites, and then we talked about the costs relative to the site versus, and that merely was how tall the water tower had to be, so the amount of shaft, and then the length of water main that would have to be connected to the tower to make it function in the system. And then we came up with the cost estimate there. This was a discussion where, okay, instead of constructing an elevated tank, there are options to construct ground storage, reservoir, and then pump into the system. The distribution system would fill the ground storage during low demand periods, and then you would pump during higher demand periods. Estimate for ground storage reservoir that we had put together there, 2.4 million essentially. And then an O&M comparison. Now this was a smaller one, but the point is here that even a composite water tower, the cost of repainting as the tower ages gets to be fairly expensive, and then over time you do see capability where ground storage would actually be less on an O&M basis. And that's as far as I was going to take it at this point, if you wanted to continue on.
Sure. So the next phase of this, I guess, is to have our fire chiefs kind of come up to the podium, and if you want to cue up that PowerPoint. So Shane sent me this data today, sorry, and I quickly put this together. He hasn't seen it, but this is all his stuff, so hopefully I did it right. He's on
Fantastic.
vacation.
Hello, Council. My name is Shane. Gallery. I'm the fire chief over in St. Bonifacius. 20 plus years of fire service, 10 years as chief, and I love my job. I'm used to talking to second graders, though, so that's my real job. If you all just hang out a little bit, that would be helpful. And when was the square dancing? Was it on Mondays or Tuesdays?
Mondays, she
Got the
said.
attention of Mondays.
Greg, it's Mondays. Greg actually asked me. Greg Peterson, Mountain Fire Chief. So he was my counsel in this matter. The council asked me to check out, to look into fire flow for the Hunters Crest development. So it was a great learning curve for me. I learned so much information about hydrants that I didn't know, I didn't realize. Don't use math in the summer as much, but I did this time. So let's see where these slides take us. My first question I had to ask myself was, how much water do I actually need to put out a house fire? So using equations, I'm the button pusher, aren't I? All right. Using calculations developed by the U.S. National Fire Academy, they decided, this group decided that if you take length times width to get an area of a room, divide that by 3, you need that much water to put out. If the room is fully engulfed in this room, we wouldn't be in here if it was 100% full. The same equation, if 2 floors are 50% engulfed with the flames. So we're using that standard, divide by 3. So I went around looking for happy citizens that were outside, smiling, playing with their children, and said, can I measure your house? They were happy to allow. So I measured some homes. I was able to gather 10 homes and broke them into groups, small, medium, and large. So measuring length times width, getting our square footage. With that number, I also add 200 gallons per minute, GPM, because not only am I spraying water onto the house to put it out, I also have firefighters spraying water on the neighbors' homes, draping down on the house so they do not catch fire also. So that's an additional 200 gallons. So that's how much water I need for a small home in the Hunters Crest. I need 567 gallons per minute. For a medium home, 767 gallons per minute. And for a large home, 934 gallons per minute. That's how much water I need. My next question is, how much water do I need to extinguish the house? So, or I asked, how much water do I have that's available? So I communicated with Public Works, and they gave me a list of 7, 8, 9 dead-end hydrants. So it's where the water system stops, and that is the best place to get a water flow furthest away from that water tower. I can get my numbers. So using equations, square roots and pies, and it was fabulous. So there it is.
And your second graders probably figured it out, right?
It was great. My brain was flowing. So PO tubes. It was designed early 1800s and still used today. The device I used looked like it could have come from an antique store, but they look the same. They haven't changed. So the equation is definitely true. Using the equation and putting the gauge on the side of the hydrant, water spraying everywhere. I would go home and my wife was wondering where I was, but water everywhere. My children came with me and enjoyed that very much. Using those equations, going to these dead-end hydrants and testing them. This is what I found. Measurements taken between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. The numbers are they're all over the place, which I was expecting, depending on elevation or how far away we were. I don't understand public works too much. That's your expertise. And water flow. Why Hunter's Trail has more gallons per minute per spruce, I don't know that answer, but those are the numbers I was able to get. Measurement number 5, 20 psi. That is our lowest, with Hunter's Trail 45 being our highest. Let's see if the next slide. There's our map. I have a daughter that's learning to drive, so she had to drive everywhere at each one because she loved that. So, can I ask if there's any questions at this point?
Shane, on the previously when you were talking about the house sizes
Yes.
and the gallons per minute,
Correct.
what's the duration of that gallon per minute calculation? So if it's 900 gallons a minute, for how many minutes or hours are we talking?
It's a great question. The standard we put at is 2 hours.
2 hours, okay.
2 hours. Yes, we'd like to put a fire out in 2 minutes, but it doesn't take 2 minutes. It takes so much water. Thanks for asking. Great. A summary of my findings. Residual pressure is, we have static pressure, the water just sitting in a hydrant, and residual pressure is the water coming out. What's the pressure coming out? And each hydrant is sufficient at above 10 psi, which is our low limit. When I pull my fire engine up to a hydrant, I take the hydrant, hook it to the engine, and then my firefighters run off with their hoses. The water comes in, and then I use my engine, I turn up the pressure, and I'm able to push out the water. And if it's 35 psi, that's pretty good. That's coming into my engine. I will increase it, and I send it out to them at 100, 120 psi. It works well. If they need more water, or I have to put more lines out, or I have to take my deluge gun on the top of my engine and spray out 800 gallons a minute, I have to turn my engine and draw more water. Not sucking, I'm drawing water out of the system. It lowers that pressure. And if I go below 10 psi, that's our guideline, 10 psi. If we go below that, it's stress on the water system, it's stress on my engine, and if the further down we go, it starts drawing water up out of people's homes. So my engineer on the engine watches that gauge so it does not go below 10. It's safe at 10, but once we go below that, we do not want to do that. So, what did we find? ISO. Greg, do you want to address ISO at all?
We don't have any old technology, do we? Like overheads?
What's that? What's that, Greg?
Don't worry, I'll try some copies. So, I'll give you a couple. Good evening. I'm Greg Peterson. We can share.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
So, what Shane was talking about, just for the record, I'm Greg Peterson, Fire Chief of Mound, half of Minnetrista, the other half's right here, covers the other half. The ISO rates communities for fire protection services, and they do like 44,000 of them around the country. So, what's really important about this discussion is that in their evaluation, this is kind of the snapshot, you guys probably know that, but the fire department itself, the quality of our department, trucks, response times, people, is 50%. 40% of the equation, the rating system is based on water supply. That's a big, big number. That's almost equal to the quality of the fire department. So you got 40% of this whole thing is based on water supply. The other 10% is based on our 911 system, which is actually really good in our county. So when Shane's talking about the insurance services audit that he's gone through in the last couple of years and we've gone through, 40% of what they look at is water supply. So as his numbers, one of the things, let me see what I can just do. I just want to pop back to this one. So we sat down and looked at these numbers last week, and based on his home's, 2,200 square foot home, 934 gallons a minute, based on those numbers, it's pretty good. One question that we really needed to answer was how long can we sustain? Can we flow 1,000 gallons a minute for 2 hours? We were at a structured fire recently, $1.3 million house. We had a 2,000 gallon a minute ladder truck there, 1,500 gallon a minute ladder truck there. That's 3,500 gallons a minute we could flow. We couldn't put it out. We couldn't supply us actually, but 1,000 gallons a minute isn't going to supply those trucks. That's kind of the challenge we have today. One of the other points that really needs to be made tonight is that the new construction, what we call lightweight construction, trusses, not the old construction lumber, they burn really fast and really hot. So you need a lot of water. So these are pretty conservative numbers. So when you're talking about flow, Shannon and I were looking at it going, 1,000 gallons a minute is our minimum, especially in new developments. Right?
Yes.
So that's the ISO thing. And I think the report, what I read in the report was you guys had in there 59 gallons a minute for 2 hours, right? Which is pretty reasonable. If you do the math on that, is that 180,000 gallons, probably? So.
Therefore.
Conclusion.
Starting statement. Therefore. So, how much water do I need? How much water do I have? We're coming to the conclusion we're going to need a minimum of 1,000 gallons at a minimum to extinguish all houses at any time in the development for 2 hours, and where there's sometimes more than 2. So, and during high usage times, as I look at the packet, 4 in the morning, we don't want to fire at 4 in the morning. We don't want to fire at 8:30. So that's when sprinklers are going, and that's just low volume. And in the systems, if I'm pulling 1,000 gallons out, I hope no one's brushing their teeth or taking a shower because I'm using all their water. So that's kind of where we're at. And Greg and I even talked about what are the chances of a lightning storm coming through and hitting a house in Hunter's Crest and then one in Turtle Creek, and it's not unlikely. So that's two fires are drawing out of the same system. So that is where
Jane Maple Grove had that happening Friday night, actually. Some upstairs about the same time. These stories. Granted, Maple Grove's bigger than Minnetrista, but at some point, it's still just a lucky, unlucky or one.
yes.
Unlucky.
Lightning storm coming through is certainly possible.
So besides square dancing on Mondays, any questions?
Any questions of the chiefs? They'll stick around until
Yes.
I do have a question for the tanker trucks. What do they hold for capacity?
what they hold for capacity. Each truck we have holds 2,000 gallons.
Okay.
So if we were to arrive to a scene that's no hydrants, we bring 5,000 gallons.
Okay.
And those tanker trucks just,
Keep on rolling.
here's our engine, we put our swimming pool down, and the tanker truck pulls up and drops water. I have 1,000 in my engine, that's about 3 minutes of water. And the tanker truck will drop, and then take off to fill again. Next one will pull up and drop its water as I keep flowing, and they just keep rotating. So I'm drawing out of this pool of water.
So the pool, you actually set up some kind of pool. I don't think I've ever seen that. They just drive over it and drop it in, or?
It's a wire frame that you pop open, and it has a liner, and they drive next to it and pull out a chute on the side of the truck and dump in. They're 2,000 gallons. Yes.
It's a big kiddie pool.
Yes. Cold water.
How fast can they replenish it then? You have 2 tankers, so how fast does that go?
It's enough it helps us until the next department is there with their tankers.
Okay.
We had our fire out, a barn fire, and I think we had 10 tankers rotating, just moving. Because so far out, we had to get to a hydrant,
Mhm.
fill, and then come out to us. So it was, and we like going to other people's fires. It's what we train for. So we're just excited to respond to anyone. I mean, you're sad, you might be smiling, but it's all that training. So, great. Gary and I will both.
Sure.
I had a
First
question.
The first alarm assignment for Minnetrista is, if it's in their service area, then we're sending 2 tankers in a rural area, so we send our 5,000 gallons of water as well. If it's in our coverage area, rural of Minnetrista, they're sending there. So first alarm assignment, meaning initial page out, there's 10,000 gallons of water on the road. So, and then we go to a second or third alarm, we're getting more tankers. So we got it set up so we have an initial 10,000 gallons right away.
So there were some questions about whether or not St. Bonnie or should be sending tanker trucks to Hunter's Crest, because we were unsure of what the gallons per minute and the PSI were out of those hydrants. So in your evaluation, is it unnecessary to send tanker trucks to Hunter's Crest? Is it sufficient to use the hydrants that are there now?
Right now, we will not be sending
Tanker trucks.
We'll be using the engine and watch that gauge.
Yep. And the other question I had is, you mentioned that the PSI, 10 PSI was the lower limit that you needed to always maintain. What's an optimal PSI to sustain for the 2 hours?
Well, the hydrant will it can give us 45, and we will just keep turning up till we get to 40, 30, 35. We will keep drawing, but once we're pulling, and that hydrant hits 10, we have to stop pulling. I don't think I'm answering your question.
20.
So the answer is it just goes down as you fight the fire and it's variable.
Right.
Okay.
20, it's okay. We can fight a fire with 20.
So you're
as long as there's volume.
Yeah.
So you're pulling in your tankers in as you see the pressure drop because you know you're going to need them?
That's what we would do, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Activate our tankers. We could probably get the fire under control, activate the tankers, and then keep it up.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So next up is Gary. He's going to talk a little bit about his needs that he sees in his area.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Council, what we see from our aspect is not only the firefighting issue, but storage needs for us. Like Shane said, there is pressure out there, but we didn't even notice when we were flushing hydrants during the day. We get numerous complaints that they lose water pressure out there because we have to run massive amounts of water to go through the hydrants to get the lines clean and flushed. So we are losing pressure. That's why we set signs up. We do email blasts to tell people it's coming. And we still get the phone calls. Storage out there would definitely help that. The other big factor now with our treatment plant we're seeing is the run times of our plants and how much everything is going. And we're concerned now adding the south system into this, how much more time it's going to take. Right now, last month in July, on average, our wells ran about 10 hours a day. is what each one, wells 6 and 7 are running, pumping about 8 million gallons of water each for 1 month to cover just the south system. Well 5, which we're adding, ran another 4 hours and pumped 2.7 million gallons that we're adding to that system. What we're seeing is, and how the plant works, the water's filtered through the filters and has to go through a backwash cycle once the filters start to get plugged up. So it back flushes everything out, cleans the filters out basically, sends it into the sludge tank underneath. The sludge tank holds this water, and in this time, the water, the sediment settles out of it, and the purpose of this was set up that we can reuse that water, so we're not wasting that water. I believe it's 8 feet we're supposed to draw out of that tank. Right now, we barely take 4 out of it because it has not had that time to settle down. So we're still drawing some dirty water out. We will not use it all because we'll plug up the filters again. So storage time out in Hunter's Crest would actually cut that down, so we'd actually have a little more time because we're not on at such demand. Like Shane said, hopefully we don't have a fire in the morning, because when sprinkler systems are going, most people don't realize this, but an average sprinkler system, on average, I would say just an average sprinkler system, say 7 zones, even at 7 heads per zone, which is pretty conservative for a yard, running at 20 minutes, you're roughly 2,000 gallons of water running in there. They have a fire, they're running, and say there's, well, how many homes in Hunter's Crest, and they're odd even. You have 100 homes running, that's a lot of water that's being taken up just in there, that's being taken out there. So we're losing just pressure, just even, we can see it in the morning with the demand, with showers and stuff like that. So we're kind of advocating for it's more for the storage aspect, so we can, keep up with our issue, because the plant doesn't have to run as much. We're going to save that money, but, now adding on that, plus we're going to be adding a lot more homes in the near future for Woodland Cove. It's just going to be more and more demand on the system. So, storage is our big factor, so that we can actually do a good hydrant flush in there. We're excited now to get the central system up and running with this, because now we can actually have volume. We can actually do some unilateral flushing and really clean out the pipes good in there. We haven't had a really super high pressure clean like we're going to have here on Thursday. We're going to start that. So, like I say, our big factor is watching the run times of what we're doing, and then, and having storage. On top of that, not only are we not keeping up, just last month alone, our well 3 ran for 60 hours and added an additional 2.2 million gallons of water to the system. It's treated water, it's not gone through the actual treatment plant. It's still fluoride and chlorine added and stuff like that, but it's a blended water, and that's just to help keep up with the system. So we're trying to figure out what's going to happen with well 3 and 5, when everything goes, how much are we going to have? So storage in the long run would definitely help out. So, that's our big factor. So
Miles, maybe you could ask, so storage, the water that's in the Kings Point water tower, would that goes through the treatment plant, goes up into the water tower, and then eventually into our system. Would that same water treated then go into another storage tank? So that would also be treated. Okay, so it goes from Kings Point water tower into the system, into the second storage facility. Is that sort of how it works? Okay, that's all. Thank you. All right.
And then the last chunk of this presentation, I'm going to send you, so if you can just take one there and pass it around. So I had Nick Olson look at our growth in water users that we've seen over the last number of years. And so I'll wait till everybody gets one here. But we have it up on the screen. You might want to enlarge that just a little bit. We can kind of scroll down as we go. So we looked at the top part of the graph looks at new home permits and how they are applied to both either the north or south water system. So currently we have 1,410 connections, 353 in the north and 1,057 in the south. The next line is what's on the books right now as vacant developable lots remaining. And as you can see, 19 out of 20 lots that remain are in the south system. So we've got 49 and 940. So we have a potential when current developable lots are built to have roughly 2,400 water users. But that's just potential, and that does not include future developments that would come before the council for approval. That's just what we have currently. And so to look at this chart, if you start at the bottom, I started in the year 2013, and we categorized all the new connections for water by year. And so those, and then in the brown would be the running total. So in 2013, the brown is 2048. We didn't add any in the north, so it's still 2048 and 14. You add 7 more and go up to 2055 and so on. So as you can see, we went from 1,000 water users in 2013 to 1,365 total in 2018 as of June. And then if you do some math, if you look at the bottom of that, we've added, since January of 2013 through the end of June of this year, we've added 410 new users. And you divide that by the 66 months, that's a little over 6 users per month, or 74.5 new users per year. And if you recall, council, at one point in time, we had a proposal for the city to consider a reverse osmosis centralized plant that was generally going to be down the road from us here. And that kind of went by the wayside. But the projections that were used in that particular model were 160 households added per year. And I think we had 1 year where we had 160 in our past.
And I don't think we ever used 160. I think it was the engineering firm we were contracting with
Correct.
at the time wanted us to use the Met Council's projections of 160. We've never used
That we-
160
Right.
units. We used the 75.
Yep, and we got it down, we talked about it and got it to 100, and then we said, well, let's just be a little bit more conservative and get to 75, and it's kind of interesting that that number that we've added since January of 2013 is 74.5, so. And then you look at the new users, like I said earlier, we're gonna add 19 of every 20 homes that gets built, there's gonna be added to the South Water System. So essentially, we're growing at 5% new homes in that south system per year. And that's a lot of growth. And so, when you hear the fire chiefs talk about they need 1,000, and you see a lot of numbers in the 900s. And then you hear what Gary said about the fact that they need storage because their wells are running at a pretty high rate, and the water treatment plant is running at a fairly high rate. That demand is not going to go down, it's just going to continue to grow. So that's why we wanted to present this information to you, so you folks on the council can hopefully make a good decision on a water tower in the southwest part of town. As I was talking with Mr. Molitor today, it's not if we need it, it's when we need it. And I don't know if the when is now, but to me, all signs point towards that. And as a reminder, I guess I could turn to the engineers and ask them, what's the time if we stuck a shovel in the ground tomorrow that the water tower would be ready? Is it 24 months? 30 months, somewhere in there? And we don't have a site yet, so we're still talking about that.
So an elevated tank will actually take longer to construct than
Okay.
ground storage. So I would estimate for an elevated tank 2 years.
Okay.
And part of the problem is, I think we talked about this, when you can paint. In the
Right.
northern climates, we can only paint a certain time of the year,
Right.
so.
So it could be 3 years if it's not great timing. No, I'm just saying it's
Yeah.
worst case
yeah.
scenario. So.
Otherwise, a ground storage tank is.
Be a couple of
it'd be
years.
Constructed
Yeah.
faster. It would be under 2 years.
Okay.
I have a question while you're up there. Mr. Barone said that we're looking at 74.5 new users per year. Is that the number in that graph that you showed us? Is that the number that you used to calculate that line that we saw?
Yeah.
74 and a
Yeah.
half?
See if they can. Oh, there. That's the slope per year that you see going up in both the gray line and the blue line is in fact that.
And that graph starts at what year? I can't see it.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's kind of hard.
It's 2014.
2014 is here.
Okay.
2017 is here. So right here, we're at about 2018 and a half with this particular everything that we're seeing from what Gary is saying and the engineering stuff is, so the stars are kind of aligning that it's.
But if we looked at the data behind that graph, it would show 74.5.
Yes, and so this is every year the population is going up, and so this is incrementally the demand that's associated with that additional growth. That gives you the slope.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. That concludes the presentations. Are there any other questions?
I do still have a lot of questions on here that
Okay,
I
we'd be happy to
didn't
go
get
through
answered.
that, so.
And I think everybody has these.
So you're talking about in your first question about the comp plan.
Right, I'm
And-
just curious why there are two different numbers that we're using for the comp plan and one that, and it's different than the connections that the SEH study shows.
I think at least from my perspective, and David or anyone can chime in, we're using real world projections in our financial data for our financial plan, and that's why we use from my perspective, the 160 is not gonna happen per year. The 75 is what we're using. So we're using the lower, much more conservative number than whatever number is inserted into the comp plan through the comp plan and Met Council's process. Is that?
I'm still confused as to, in our 2040 comp plan, it shows the total number of water connections in 2015 is 1648.
Was that
And
our
Let-
new one, or
Our
was that
new
the?
one, our new one.
Because the 2040 comp plan, I don't recall that. Okay.
Our new comp plan that we've been working on and we've submitted.
Okay.
And the SEH study, or their study showed that the connections were 1,245 in 2015. These are 2015 numbers, and I would assume that those are actual numbers that we can verify, and I'm curious as to why there are two wildly different numbers being used for 2015 that are 30% apart. There's a 30% difference between the two. And either our comp plan numbers are way off or the SEH report is way off. And I tend to trust the SEH report more because I know the Met Council tends to increase numbers, but I think we need to be, I'm confused as to why these numbers aren't the same, because their actual numbers were way past 2015 and they should be actuals.
I don't have an answer for that one, other than the fact that
Could have been
we're just.
estimated.
Yeah, for the financial projections, we've been using the lower numbers. And that's what we got out of our finance software and everything. And that's what we've given to SEH. So I guess, yeah, the comp plan, I guess.
Could have been an estimate that maybe the number wasn't fixed or something. I mean, the actual number was 1245.
In the study.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. That's the numbers we're using for our the projections.
Okay, well, I guess it's hard for me to have trust in numbers when there's big differences like that, and they can't be explained. The second one is in our 2040 comp plan, it shows that there's been a downward trend in the total per capita and maximum daily water demands for the past several years. Why does the commission study that SEH did show an increase in the maximum daily per capita water use? And it shows it increasing by 78% in 2016. And if they're estimates, I can understand, but if they're actuals, what was the cause of that dramatic rise?
I can't answer what was in the comp plan, but I can tell you that I believe the maximum per capita water use is increasing because our population and demand is increasing. Number of households are increasing, so.
Well, no, it's per capita or per household. So a lot of times what happens is when you have new home construction you'll see a spike in your water usage because of the new landscaping. That's quite obvious, that you can check with Public Works, you can check with engineering firms. When you have a lot of new construction, they have a lot of new lawns and they tend to water them a lot, and that does spike the usage. So that will skew, if you will, the overall average. The other thing is, I've heard from a number of different sources, I've heard anywhere from 250 to 350. So it's somewhere in that range. If you go to a number of different sources, I think Met Council has an average, if you will. We could, Gary probably has an average too, in terms of how much is used on a daily basis, and then if you divide that up per household, you can get that too. And I don't know, maybe Miles, you could tell us how you came up with the average, or maybe yeah.
Typically what we do is we'll look at historical per capita water use for each individual community. I believe we did that here. And looking back on the last 2 years, water use trends have been down on per capita use because we've had a lot of white years. So that's reduced the amount of water people have got, so that brings that number down. When we're planning for water facilities, we want to look back at a reasonable level for like a dry weather year. And a lot of cases in recent years, we look back to 2012 for per capita use, because that was the most recent drought year. We want to plan for the kind of the worst case scenario when people are completely irrigating, watering, those sorts of things. So when we select that number, we're holding that per capita water use number constant, but we're multiplying it by a higher population or a higher number of connections. So that shows our average day water use growing and our maximum day water use growing over time.
But the 2016 numbers, were those actuals or estimated in your study?
2016 numbers?
Yes.
Depending on which one we're looking at, the most recent one would have been actual.
And I guess I'm still confused as to what would have caused the 78% increase when preceding that, we had been seeing a decrease, a trend that was going down. What would make it spike 78%?
Are you referring to the average day per capita, or is it the max day per capita?
Maximum day per capita water.
So maximum days are quite variable when it comes to amount of water use over the course of a year. So a very wet year, you might not see a very big maximum day water use. Now there could be an anomaly where you have a long dry spell, and for some odd reason everyone decides to water on the same day. That'll definitely spike that maximum day water use quite high, and create kind of the worst case scenario. When we're looking at future projections, we're always planning for that worst case scenario. You may not see it for a year or two, 3 or 4 years, but when you hit that dry weather pattern or other years, you can see the maximum day water use spike like that. So it's really variable year by year. The average day on a year by year basis, it's pretty consistent, going up and down. The max days can vary quite a bit.
And the other question is, why was the data for 2011 missing in the report?
I think that had to do with the DNR reporting, the information that was available.
All those numbers don't come from our system?
Typically, we pull it from the DNR water reporting system at ours. So it may have been missing from their system for some reason. I have to look back and see what's going on there.
We have to report to the DNR how much water we pump on an annual basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you took those numbers from the DNR site. Yep. And we have to report it annually because we're authorized, we're given a certificate allocation, if you will. And then they want to see if we are sticking to our allocation, are we exceeding it, and that kind of thing.
And Gary, did you want to talk a little bit about
Well, I just gonna say, I just did some rough numbers here for your per capita that you're looking for. 2015, 316, dropped down to 314 in 2016. 2017, 339. Just using rough numbers I have here.
And those are max.
So, yep.
So that's.
So just rough. I mean, that's just kind of doing some rough calculations, but, so I mean, but yeah, as far as the DNR numbers go, for 2011, That was before I got here. I don't know why they are missing. They are not in our system anywhere. So I don't know if you guys went to the DNR. It had to be reported. I don't know if it was amended or at one time or something, but we have every other year. But yes, you're correct. They are not there. We don't know. I do not know why. It was before I got here. So
Okay. And thank you. That's all I had for you. Is the cost for the new water tower going to be spread across all the water users in the city or just the Southwest?
Be all.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's going to just increase, it ultimately will increase the cost of all those
Yeah,
water
it'd be no different
connections
than
and
when we did the water
treatments.
treatment plants and the water main, correct?
And then I haven't heard any discussion about the revenue bonds to pay for this and how many new connections do we need to pay for that? And what is our break-even point and what happens if we don't continue this growth? What happens if we don't continue to add 74 homes each year? What if that falls to 50 or what if it falls to 40? What's our break-even point for paying for these revenue bonds? And I realize it may not be something you can answer tonight, but it was in my list of questions and I was hoping to get an answer to that. But and I'm just looking for estimates. I know we don't know what the interest rates are going to be. There are a lot of unknowns, but I'd like to at least know that we've thought about what might happen if that growth doesn't continue and how are we going to pay back these revenue bonds?
And we have a
I mean,
financial plan for
Yeah, with
that,
our utility financial management, this was always like the third leg or the third piece, I guess, of the, it was always gonna be about $14 million, is what the final number fell on as far as total improvements. I mean, we did the water treatment plants for about 9 million, and then the water main was about 2.5, so that's 11.5 that's been done. And then now the last 2.5 was always, that, and we've had it plugged into the plan, has been the water tower. And when I worked, we had Ellers here at the work session and stuff, and when we did the plan, basically the 75 connections a year is what we landed on to plug in as an assumption, and then basically 4% a year for annually for the next several years. We didn't want to do big, 10% one year and then 1 or 2 the next. It's like, well, if we did 4 for the foreseeable future, we should be able to incorporate the improvements we've already done, plus this water tower has been plugged into the plan ever since we started talking about this in 2014, 15, well, probably even before that, 12, 13. It's been a long and arduous process or whatever. But so I guess if we, for some reason, have 60 homes versus 75, well, maybe rates a year would have to go up 4.5 or 5%. But on the flip side, if we get a couple years where we go 90, 100, maybe the rates only need to increase 3% or 2.5 or 3 in a year. So that's sort of how you mitigate, I guess, if you don't hit the number of connections we're projecting and hoping to hit. So
I'd like to add something to that. Your scenario there is obviously that is one potential way to address a shortcoming or an overage, if you will. Another is the fact that this water fund currently has a balance of about $2 million or something like that.
$2.5 million, yeah.
So that we don't, either we don't have to finance all of it, we pay some cash up front, or we do finance all of it and you use the fund balance to overcome any shortfalls.
Correct, yeah, if you have a year where you have 60 homes or something, you just spend a little more in fund
just
balance.
like what we do on the general fund, sometimes we bring it down, sometimes we don't.
Correct. Yep.
That'd be another way of doing it so that we don't have these fluctuations in rates.
Yeah,
Just gotta keep
that probably would be the recommended way to do it. Yeah, if you have a year, you're a little less, you just, take a little more and hopefully
depending on what the
averages out.
balance is, but given that we have about $2 million, if I remember correctly, balance, that should allow for that.
Yeah.
I think. So.
Yeah, true, sorry, too.
And I appreciate your willingness to answer all these questions because I wasn't here when we first started talking about the water tower and neither was Councilmember Tschumperlin, and I appreciate all the work that Chief Weber went to spend his summer doing math and figuring out all this stuff for us. So I appreciate ability to ask questions and get answers. So thank you.
Okay.
Did we answer it all? I just want to make sure that you're comfortable with the questions that you asked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we answered some of them during the presentation. So.
Okay, so this was a special presentation, so we're not going to take any action on it tonight. And we'll be discussing this again another time and hopefully making some decisions shortly. So again, thank you for coming, and again, Chief Weber, thank you for your time and troubles, and really appreciated your presentation. Very good information for us to have, so thank you. So next, we have persons to be heard. We have a number of people signed up, and this is for the golf cart ordinance. Would you gentlemen like to wait until we get to that part of our meeting? Because you can certainly have an opportunity at that time. So I'll move on then to consent agenda items. It's approve our work session meeting minutes from July 16th, approve our closed session meeting minutes from July 16th, and approve our regular meeting minutes from July 16th, and then also approve our claims. And a resolution E would be to approve a variance for front yard and side yard setbacks for the Minnetrista Baptist Church at 4185 Highland Road. Is there a motion to approve these consent agenda items?
I'd like to pull item D off consent agenda.
Approve claims, okay. So it's approve A, B, C, and E. Is there a motion to approve those consent agenda items?
So moved.
Okay, a motion has been made by Ms. Mortenson and seconded by Mr. Molitor.
No, it's Tschumperlin.
Oh, Tschumperlin, sorry, thank you. Mr. Tschumperlin then. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. Ms. Bruce, claims?
Yes, I'm having an issue with my mouse here for a second. On page 15 of the claims, there are two questions that I had. And I talked about one of these with Mr. Barone this morning. There's a $97,000 payment for a server to Loeffler. And again, I just wanted to bring this up because the IT world is moving to cloud storage and away from hard storage on servers. And I know Loeffler does a lot of their business with servers and maintaining them and providing security for them. And I'm thinking we might want to consider getting some outside advice on cloud storage solutions for the city. They're cheaper. They're just as there used to be questions about security on servers, and that's come a long ways to where Hennepin County and a lot of other cities are using Microsoft 365 and not using these stored on-premises servers any longer that don't require the maintenance and cost. And whenever you have software that runs on those servers, those software costs are a lot more expensive as well. So cloud systems are just, they're cheaper, they're more efficient, and I'd like to, maybe it's a work session.
Well, I was going to say we can't make a decision
No.
tonight because we don't have the information. Staff would have to research it. I
Right.
don't know what the legal implications are. We may have legal
Yeah,
requirements.
so maybe it's a
But
work
we can do a
session
work
item that we
session at
can talk
a
about.
later date. Sure, not a
And
problem.
The other question is, there was a payment to Kennedy and Graven for $1,173 for a golf cart ordinance, and I'm just
It's
curious.
asterisked, and that means it's going to be reimbursed.
Yep.
Mhm.
Reimbursed.
By the person, Mr. Robinson, who requested that.
So my question is, council hasn't asked for an ordinance to be drafted yet, and.
It
yet
wasn't, I'll have
we're-
Mr.
so
Beatty
I'm
weigh.
curious, well, what is the process normally when an ordinance is asked for? Doesn't council initiate that?
Not necessarily. It can be initiated by this process. Either Mr. Beatty or Mr. Abel, you can weigh in.
Sure, Madam Mayor, I can answer the question. Well, this is what we discussed last time. This ordinance came about through an application, which is why Mr. Robinson is here tonight. It's like any other application for a land use application. People make an application, they understand they have to pay for it, whether the application is approved or not. So this is a reimbursement of those costs that otherwise would be borne by the city.
So these costs are, this amount is just for the application?
No, it's for what's been done to date.
This is for Kenny and Graven's time, which, we're paying them, but then we'll get the money back from the applicant.
Right, so what kind of work has been done to?
The ordinance that was drafted and you talked about last time. There was a whole ordinance that was drafted and presented to the council 3 weeks ago.
And I'm just curious, why are we drafting an ordinance before council has decided that we want an ordinance drafted?
Because
That's
there
my
was an
question.
application made asking for that.
I understand that, but doesn't council decide that?
Council decides whether or not we, one, want to approve the ordinance as presented or make changes, but if the application is for an ordinance to allow golf carts, then they draft the ordinance.
So can any resident come and ask for an ordinance and we would draft an ordinance for them?
If they make an application and agree to pay the fee.
And that was the case here, is that correct,
That's
David?
exactly
This was
right.
a land use.
We talked about this last time.
I have a follow-up question, if I may. Has there been an escrow set up for this that the applicant has deposited to? Okay. And so have we, at this point, does this 1173 exceed that escrow amount?
Yes.
It does, okay. So what's our recourse then if this doesn't pass and we are out of escrow?
It happens all the time, whether it's an ordinance or any land use application, we send a bill to the applicant.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on the claims? Okay. So is there a motion to approve the claims as presented?
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. A motion has been made by Ms. Mortenson and seconded by Mr. Molitor this time. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. I think everybody said A. Okay. All right. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. So we have no public hearings. We'll move on to our business items. Hopefully we can get through them fairly quickly. We'll start with accept plans and specifications and reject the bids for the 2018 Mill and Overlay Improvement Project. Mr. Hornby?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. In your packet, there is a memo and resolution that depicted the bidding situation for the 2018 Mill and Overlay Project. There's also a handout that had some highlighted numbers on them. I noticed that in going through the Schedule C, D, and F, that the item in the original memo was quoted incorrectly. I think it was as simple as someone turned a page on the bid tabulation and went to the wrong column and took it. So the highlighted numbers that were handed out in hard copy are the corrected version. And those schedules added up would equal the total low bid that was received. The city council, you may recall that the council authorized advertisement before we accepted the plans and specifications. So in this process, we wanted the council not only to consider the bids that were received, but also to accept the plans and specifications. We did receive, excuse me, I have to open another memo. 4 bids. The lowest bid received was from GMH Asphalt Corporation for $491,597. That included the mill and overlay improvements. That breakdown was $265,170. Schedule B was well number 7 driveway improvements. That bid breakdown was $17,530. The Slope Creek Trail improvements is $47,758. The City Hall parking lot improvements was $123,169. And the Sunnybrook Circle drain tile improvements is $37,970. All of those are over cost. The more significant one is anything with pavement came in very high. You may recall we did have a major fire in Superior. It was at the refinery, and that refinery produced some of the performance graded oils that we use in pavement, in particular a sea oil. And I think what's happened in the marketplace is that since people are now not using the sea oil because the cost went up so much, they're using the bee oil, which we had for the mill and overlay. And the cost for the pavement came in around 25% higher than what we anticipated in our CIP.
And so, all the costs for the bituminous pavement items came in higher than anticipated. The mill and overlay, as budgeted, was around $212,000. I guess in the memo, what was stated was 194. And there's two things we looked at. I looked at $350,000 as the budget. The CIP had 330,000. So if we use 330,000, you're at 194,000 versus the 212,000. We looked at indirect costs and so forth, and there was, we're looking at a significant increase in the cost of the mill and overlay. The well 7 driveway improvements comes in a little bit higher than anticipated. Slow Creek Trail came in a lot higher than we thought we were going to come in at. The parking lot we had budgeted at $80,000. That included indirect costs, and the bid amount just for construction is $123,169. What all this comes down to is that bids came in a lot higher than anticipated, and I think primarily due to the pavement cost increases that we're seeing across the board at this time. So from that standpoint, staff is recommending approving the resolution in your packet. That is resolution
108-18.
Which would accept plans and specifications and would reject all bids for the 2018 mill and overlay improvements. That's city project 02.
So with that, we would wrap the budgeted projects from 2018 into hopefully whatever we decide for 2019 and do a spring, early in the year bid would be the plan, correct? And then
That's correct.
I guess the other question would be would it make sense for any of these smaller items, Schedule B, C, and F? I know we wrapped them into a project, but would it make sense to quote out any of those individual this fall yet, if any of those can get done? And maybe that would be something Gary would have a say on or an opinion on, I guess. Or
Yeah, actually, I have contacted 4 different smaller contractors. I received a call back from one to actually give us some pricing on the well 7 driveway, the trail improvement, and then one other company for the drain tile improvement, just to get us some other numbers to see where we're kind of sitting. So as of today, I've only had one call back, but I called during the day. Most
Right.
companies are out, so hopefully I'll get some
But
call
we
backs
could-
today, and
Yeah, and we
we'll get
can
some
decide
numbers.
that later,
Yeah.
at our next meeting, for instance, with those numbers. But tonight, we need to decide on
Yeah.
accepting or rejecting the bids.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So, yeah, and that would be a good idea.
Yeah, seeing they're under the threshold for
Yeah.
bidding versus quoting and stuff.
Okay.
If we pushed any of these back, which I hope we do, are we crunching time again for weather?
Well, they wouldn't happen until next spring.
None of
Yeah,
this
it
would
wouldn't, yeah.
happen
Me too, yeah.
until
We would roll
2019.
them into a 2019 project.
Yeah,
If Public Works goes out and quotes some of these projects, they may be small enough to get them done yet this year.
Okay.
But the majority of them would just be rolled into next year.
the mill and overlay.
Mill and overlay portion.
Mill and
Yeah.
overlay would be next year.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the city hall parking lots that's out too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good questions. All right.
Will the Superior plant be up again and rolling in 2019?
Well,
Well, that's a good question, and then after it is up and running, does that mean the prices will come down, or everyone's used to the prices as they came in? That's gonna be the big question that we've been talking about in the office, so.
or if enough cities reject the bids, maybe they will have to come down.
Correct. I mean, competitive bidding
Yeah.
kind of draws the pricing on it, so
Yeah.
I think eventually, yes, in 2019, the prices will come back, we'll see them come back down.
Okay.
I think earlier in the year, we were getting prices for pavement in the $35 to $40 a ton. So in comparison, for a mill and overlay on a type B oil, which typically should be lower, we're looking at $83 a ton. So that's what that type of impact, in this case, one refinery seems to have.
Okay. So Gary will bring back some quotes on the smaller ones, and then, what is your pleasure, council? Go with staff's recommendation.
I guess I'd like to see some progress this year. I mean,
Well, Gary will bring back some quotes.
Okay, but Do we have any parameters about whether we're gonna take those or not? Or are we just gonna pass on everything this year? Because I'm not confident that next year's prices will go down. And when was the last time I saw prices go down anything?
Well, I think the timing, I think if we can get them out so we can be receiving bids in March, April, I think that can make a huge difference, but that's just my opinion.
I haven't seen
at
that
least.
happen here yet either, too.
Well, I don't think we've done a lot of bids, and I think everything we've done lately has always been, we've been bidding it in July, August, September.
That's my point.
No, I think that needs to change. That's what
I
I'm
would
saying.
agree, that's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. I would agree.
Well, this would be ready to go out like in
Well,
February,
yeah.
March,
And we,
because it's already
and
done.
we just have to add the other stuff and make
Right.
sure it happens or whatever.
Yeah.
so.
That's, but given what we've just talked about in a work session around financing, we've got a lot of questions that I'm not quite as confident we're gonna get all those addressed at the pace we go in time for an early bid next year.
Well, we could bid just this in the early part of next year, if that's what you wanted. I'm not willing to pay, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands. I mean, we're talking, $70,000 more. I mean, we're talking more than $100,000 more for this. We don't have that kind
Well,
of money.
I'm not suggesting that we would do it all. That's simply not feasible. But
I'm saying if we even maybe core some roads, if we can get our budget pretty much set, I think we made some good progress at the work session there, but if you can get that pretty well set in fall, and maybe even core some roads, if we can know what we're doing for sure in 2019, we could have everything wrapped in the 2018 with the 19 and be
well,
bidding. but-
given that we haven't, if we're not gonna do these, I don't even see a need to core. We should have that decision.
No, for these, but I mean, I'm saying the
For
ones you
anything.
want to add for
I mean,
2019.
we've got enough in the pipeline already that we know.
That's
needs
true.
to be
Well, we've
attacked.
already cored.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
So
Mhm.
it shouldn't be that hard to add in enough to and get it bidding out in early spring, from my opinion.
I understand what your concerns are, and we've been saying that, so.
So the way I understand things, Gary's gonna bring back some suggestions that we can still do this year, right?
Some of the smaller ones.
Okay.
So the Sunnybrook Circle drain tile improvement, the well number 7 driveway improvement, possibly the Slow Creek Trail improvements. If they fall under a certain amount, we don't have to go out for competitive bidding. We can just get quotes, and then we can see what they come in at. We might get
What is the
Is there-
dollar amount?
I think it's 100,000.
100,000.
Is there something that's not on this list that we could move up?
As far as,
I mean, just of the, 5 listed here, is there something that's on the 2019 that would, we could move up? We're just, again, I feel like we're kicking the can down the road, and we're not addressing, what we wanted to do because of the cost, which
Sure.
totally understandable. But is there something that was slated for 2019 that we could move up now that wouldn't be affected by the price change or the increase from the problem up in Superior?
Well, if it's pavement related, I think you're gonna see the same
So
thing.
everything's
Right.
gonna be affected, nothing.
Right.
And there's no other competition that we're looking at, anybody else? I mean, is this the only resource?
It's just the bids.
Well, these are the bids. You have to go out for competitive bidding, so by law.
Well, and that's, what we're seeing in the industry, and we're talking to the contractors, this is what they're finding. So what happens is that you have, each contractor doesn't have their own bituminous plant. There are a couple of major producers of bituminous. They set the price. So when all these guys that do paving are trying to get pavement, they're calling a plant. They're calling a big commercial producer and saying, what can I get? This is the quantity I need. This is about the time frame I need it. This is the mixed design. They give them a price for it. And then they have to decide what they're gonna put on that with overhead and profit to bid on a project. So instead of, in our CIP, we're estimating about $65 a ton, you're seeing $83 to $85 to $88 a ton. So I don't think you're gonna see that price change much this year.
All right.
I think I'd recommend staff's, I'd go with staff's recommendation on this.
Well, hopefully by the same time next, or earlier in the season next year, by next July, we're looking at, we've done what we plan to do this fall, 2018, plus what we want to get done spring of 19, and we'll be in the same spot we are next July as we are just all
Yeah,
at once.
it'll be a few months.
And ideally,
Hopefully.
you'd want to be you'd want to be producing plans and specs for a bid in February or March
Yeah.
in 2019.
We need
Now,
to do.
that's
Right.
when you want to be doing it.
And
Right.
that's what we've been saying for,
Yeah.
all right. So,
So just from a question from a finance perspective, if we pass on this year, does this go to the road fund?
Yeah, just be a
it
time.
just
It'll
stays in
sit, the money that basically we've levied dollars, that money will sit there in the fund balance, and then we'll spend that plus what we levy again next year on whatever we do for 18, 19 mill and overlay projects. Yes, yeah.
Well, if we do that, then I would suspect that changes dramatically what we just talked about in the work session.
it might.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it would, because now you're looking at, we were looking at, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but if we weren't going to, if we're looking at a total spend next year on roads of, and I'm just doing it off the top of my head.
780,
I thought it was-
730, because 400 for 19 is what was recommended, and 330 is what we currently have. So it'd be 730 total.
Yeah, you'd carry it. Well, we did some seal coating this year, so it's
Yeah.
not the full amount.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean,
That's
it's a mill
true.
and over is 250, so you'd roll, or 230, 250, whatever it is. You'd roll that over plus whatever you allocate for mill and overlay out of our road budget next year, and you'd have double what you usually have, or double a little more, whatever you end up doing for. Which might help with maybe a bigger project, maybe gets a little more bidders. I don't know. I mean, that's.
Well, then that changes which project it would take too, because if you're gonna have a bigger spend,
Good.
which that's, you kind of get this whole dynamic going, it changes a lot of different things. That, yeah, if we're gonna go out with a $700,000 budget, then maybe your list of, rather than doing 10 small things, that gives you the power to do one or two larger things.
But we can discuss that, and maybe we can even bring that back at our next meeting. But tonight, it's simply, do we want to accept this bid or reject the bid?
I get that,
So,
but we need to have that
And-
decision in the context
Yeah.
of what we're gonna do overall.
Well, I
Because-
don't want to have to decide what we're going to do for sure next year tonight, because we don't
No.
have all the information.
No, but we.
But you're correct. We should bring it back sooner than later,
Mhm.
put it all together in the right context, if you will, and then we can make a decision what we're going to do next year. And it should be part of our budget discussions then. So, you're right. I think we all agree on that.
Yes.
All right, so is there a motion then to recommend rejecting the bids for the, it would be resolution number 108-18, approving plans and specifications and rejecting those bids?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
A second.
Okay, any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Post.
Motion passes 4-1. So we will bring this back at our next council meeting for discussion on 2019 road projects, or,
We can as part of the
okay.
work session.
I think sooner, yeah, okay, sooner than later, so that we don't get behind the 8 ball again. All right, so next we have a change order for Enchanted Lane and Tuxedo Road in Grandview Avenue. This was the improvement projects, and if you recall, Tuxedo and Enchanted were delayed because of the Met Council items and improvements that they had to do to their sewer line and so on. So who wants to take this one?
Let Mr. Hornby go ahead, and I'll just chime in as we go here.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, we've been working with the Met Council, we've been working with the contractor, Valley Paving, for the Enchanted Lane, Tuxedo Road street improvements project, and also includes the Grandview Avenue improvements. I think council can recall last year we had awarded a project, and then I believe shortly thereafter the Met Council had another force main break and decided they had to replace the force main. There was a third break in about a year and a half out on Enchanted Lane, Tuxedo Road, and they decided to replace that force main. It delayed our project. The Assistant General Manager, Jeanne Clancy, came and talked to you, as well as our project manager for the Force Main project, Kris, and talked about making some commitments to the city as part of delaying our project. The Met Council has paid their contractor directly for some of the items. They actually have paid the difference in cost to the city's contractor on some items that came in. For instance, they had open cut about 300 feet of the roadway, and then they paid the difference in cost to Valley Paving directly for the additional cost of doing that short 300 feet of pavement. So they, in that sense, made up that difference in cost. There's some other things on the table that they also had committed to pay for. So we sent a variety of items out for change orders, for consideration and change order for the project, and the item that we kept in was the Tuxedo Road boat launch. That boat launch was used by the Met Council, was also used by the city's contractor for storage of material and equipment. It had deteriorated to the point where a mill and overlay is no longer recommended. There are a number of potholes in there. This curb that got destroyed as part of a project, and it really needs to be now, instead of mill and overlay, reconstructed. So we had that part as part of change order number 2, and that came back as a quoted item for $86,118.67. There's a need to add driveway patching to the project, in part the area where the road was raised on Enchanted Lane to reduce flooding, and then also along routes in this much smaller fashion, patching driveways. Typically, you go through in a mill in a reclaim, you go by driveways and match that same point and not have to remove that pavement. In this case, a lot of the driveways were at a point where they came apart, so we have to look at doing a couple foot transition from the pavement to the driveway. And so this would cover that item. There's about 400 square yards of driveway patching that we estimated, and that comes out to about $16,500. The 2018 unit price increases, this is an item that would be covered by the Metropolitan Council as part of their offer to add some funding to the project. That is for pricing that contract unit prices for each individual item. They saw increases in labor and equipment and material handling between 2017 and 2018, and that represents an estimate of what those differences in cost would be. That's $27,403.66. And then we would deduct the mill and overlay as bid by the city contractor, which was $13,212.20. So the total for change order 2 would be $116,837.13. The Metropolitan Council, in negotiation with staff, this is, I think, a whole staff effort, and working with the Met Council, they had made one offer that, from a staff standpoint, we thought was too low, and then with the response back to the assistant general manager, they committed to funding $92,500 for the construction work in 2018. So with that, it would, in the cooperative effort in funding the change order to the city portion of the work, would be $24,337.13. Staff is recommending that the council approve this change order, and we can get our contractor rescheduled to begin work, and that would be approving resolution 109-18, and that would approve change order 2 for the Enchanted Lane, Tuxedo Road, and Grandview Avenue improvements.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
So with this change order, if it's approved, do we have a time frame as to when this gets wrapped up?
Once the change order is approved, I'll go back to the contractor tomorrow, if it's approved tonight, and ask him to commit to a schedule to reconstruct it. And they actually are, we're hitting a time where they would have a window.
Okay.
When I initiated this change order, they had a timeline coming up in mid-August that they thought might work well. So I still have to negotiate that time, officially, you should see another change order that would extend that contract completion. That was their only concern in signing the change order that's in your packet, is that the contract date would not reflect this work. We're already beyond that.
So is that gonna hold us up though?
No,
Okay.
no, they would schedule this work and let us know what date would work. We'd bring another change order back that would include that contract change.
Okay. So beyond the paving that's put in here, other punch list items that the contractor has to do, or where do we stand on those?
Well, there will be some punch list items, but we're not even to that point yet.
That's kind of mad. So, okay, so you probably won't know that until you get a timeline on this part of it.
Correct.
Okay.
We'll add some time in for that. So typically what I would do is get a date in which they can have it substantially complete, and then look at the time we had in the original contract to complete punch list. It's probably 2 weeks.
Okay.
And add that on.
Okay.
A little different than Halsted.
Right, well, that's what I'm gonna ask you here, is
Yeah.
just, I wanna get some idea of, you know, when we can put this to bed and people can kinda go, okay, yes, we're done. That we don't have, major things outstanding that we're gonna come back and say, oh, there's another change order for X, Y, and Z. My impression is that's not the case. Just want to confirm that.
The big thing was to try to get the boat launch done in conjunction with the
Right,
road. Yep,
right.
so, yeah.
Yeah, I realize this is the big thing, just kind of want to make sure there's no other things out there that we can at least get one of these put to bed.
I could add that there was a number of other items we asked them to do along with the change order, some things that Public Works wanted it done, but the pricing that came back on those are very high, and actually Public Works, I think, has scheduled a couple of those items already to do on their own. So they're working on those items.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve change order number 2 for the Enchanted Lane, Tuxedo Road, and Grandview Avenue Improvement Project? It would be resolution number 109-18.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. And then we have a change order for Halsted Drive project.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, for Halsted Drive, we have work order number 3. Work order number 3 primarily addresses the fact that we didn't have any topsoil on site that was usable. In the project plan, we make estimates based on the area impacted outside the roadway of how much topsoil we may have to salvage and respread. Oftentimes during construction, you may have 6 inches of topsoil that you could salvage. You probably think you're going to be able to use half of that back in the project. In this particular project, there's absolutely no topsoil that could be used. So we did have a contingency quantity of 1,000 cubic yards in the plan. This contractor bid $1 on that and has already used that quantity at $1. So we went out for a work order. I actually explained that contract is once you extend beyond 125% of the original unit price, the contractor can renegotiate the contract unit price. We did that in this case. So we estimated a quantity of 2,400 additional cubic yards of topsoil is going to be needed to cover the area. We actually reduced that down. The plan called for 6 inches of topsoil. We've reduced that so that there's 4 inches alongside the edge of the road, and then we transitioned to 2 inches through the ditch to save money. Otherwise, this would have been a lot more extensive. Contractor agreed to do that. In fact, most of that work is done. There's still some that needs to be done in some areas that still need grading. The net change in this work order is $88,320. The engineers have recommended it. The contractor has signed, and MnDOT has also approved. This would increase the contract from $2,444,858.46 to $2,533,178.46. And that would be for, we're recommending council approve resolution number 110-18, and that's for change order number 3 for Halsted Drive. I should mention change order and work order are the same thing. Work order is the MnDOT term for it instead of change order.
Okay. Council, questions?
Was this amount in the budget, in the contingency amount for the budget for this project?
I can take that. I mean, basically, I think in the memo here, so the previous work orders 1 and 2 had actually reduced the contract by almost 19,000 here, or whatever. So with this one of 88, I think we're sitting at a net 69, 70,000 in added work orders, and it was basically a $2.5 million project. So we had 5% contingency, so we're 125,000 contingency. We're sitting at 70, so it wouldn't be within the budget. I guess. Long story short, I guess. Or, so yeah.
Right, because where else would the money come from?
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's why we have contingencies, so. All right, good question. Anybody else? Otherwise, is there a motion to accept staff's recommendation and adopt resolution number 110-18, approving the work order for the 3 for the Halstead Drive Street Improvement Project?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, yeah.
Is this maybe one of the last things we'll see for changes for this project?
I wouldn't bet on
I wouldn't,
Yeah.
yeah.
At this project. Some other projects I'd be a little bit more confident, but not this one.
That was my question about this, you know, I wanted to make sure that was, this one, no, I
Yeah.
don't think we're anywhere near done with this.
But this is the project where we're already past.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, this should help move things along, I guess, unless I'm speaking on it.
Nope, you're
Okay.
All right. And later on, I think staff is going to be sharing with us a work schedule that they've agreed to. So we'll hear about that later. So a motion has been made and seconded. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. Master partnership contract with the Minnesota Department of Transportation.
Again, Mayor and members of the council, I think that's for me to present. So every community that uses state services of some manner in the transportation realm are going to use MnDOT services. And one example I've used in the memo in the packet is that when we're doing a state-funded project, we use a certified plant, a MnDOT certified plant for bituminous, for concrete, other MnDOT certified suppliers. For what we typically use for Minnetrista for MnDOT services are to have a MnDOT person be at the bituminous plant or the concrete plant to check gradations, certify the gradations, and so they certify that the plant meets MnDOT specifications. And this is what we need for state funding. Oftentimes what ends up happening is MnDOT gets 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 requests for inspection, plant inspection at one plant. So when they do that, they have a person that's maybe there 8 to 12 hours doing these plant inspections. So they spread those costs out among those other communities that they're also working for. If you were to go and have a consultant at that plant, you could pay quite a bit more because that consultant may only be working for one community, and then those costs are borne by the community. And I gave some examples on how those fees could change. A recent plant inspection that we had been invoiced for in Minnetrista for a plant inspection was about $1,300. And as a comparison from a consultant fees and putting those together, it could be about $2,000. So there is a savings in having these kind of agreements with MnDOT. They can also do things such as test the strength of concrete by crushing samples. So for instance, curb, you take cylinders, sample cylinders, and you send them in a big press and crush them. They're supposed to have a certain compressive strength to meet MnDOT specification. And so they will do that. Other geotechnical companies will do that as well in a private lab. The funny thing is that this agreement ran out in 2013, and we've had MnDOT inspection on our plants, on our projects up until, I think they notified us in June, that this contract expired. I think the first time we contacted them to do an inspection this year, they said, well, our contract expired in 2013, so which led me to believe, well, why were they doing it last year? All that said, they sent a new contract, and they requested that we approve a resolution that would, the city would enter into this agreement, master partnership contract with Minnesota Department of Transportation. If for nothing else, the purpose I just mentioned, understanding project would be helpful to have this contract in place.
And there's no cost to the
There's
city
no
for the
cost
contract?
until
Mhm.
until we request a service.
Until we, yeah.
It also works in that MnDOT could request a service from the city as well, in a local partnership, according to this grant, and the funds transfer for whoever's requesting that service. So it's a mutual benefit. And with that, staff does recommend that the council approve resolution 111-18 to approve the master partnership contract with the Minnesota Department of Transportation.
Okay.
I have a question on page 74 of our packet. In this agreement, it says that the local government's authorized representative is also authorized to execute work order contracts on behalf of the local government, that's us, without approval of each proposed work order contract by its governing body. So my question is there a dollar amount that, or I guess that's something that we decide, or does this just give the city engineer the authority to execute work orders without running them past council? I guess that's my concern.
And that's a really good question. We had that same concern because we didn't want council to think that you're just writing a blank check to the engineers or anyone else as your. So in the resolution, I changed paragraph 3 in the resolution that said the city administrator, the clerk, and or the engineer is authorized to negotiate work order contracts pursuant to the master contract, which work order contracts may provide for payment to or from MnDOT, and that the administrator, clerk, and or engineer may execute such work orders contracts on behalf of the city of Minnetrista in accordance with the city policies as set by the council. So oftentimes these types of things like plant inspections, they're not exceeding that $2,500 amount. So it also gives other staff members other than the engineer who's a consultant to make those decisions for you.
Okay.
Although keeping in mind it is typically we're the ones contacting MnDOT to set up these inspections. But
Sure, yeah, it sounds like it makes sense.
So do they submit bids like other people submit bids on projects like this?
MnDOT?
Yeah.
No.
So
No, it's
how
a
do you know
service.
you're
It's a
getting
service they provide.
How do you know you're getting the best price then?
Well, that's why I tried to lay out an example from a geotechnical firm versus doing that privately for one city versus having MnDOT doing it for one or more cities. So when you look at some of these larger governmental units, they already have costs associated with their personnel. They're paying them overhead, they're paying them, they're paying their benefits and all that kind of thing. They're going to be someplace. They're going to recoup some of those costs, and it may appear that I'll take MnDOT, that their overhead rate is actually quite low because there's already a certain dollar, that's already figured into a fee. So I think what they can do, because they are such a big agency, is they can put that service out as a benefit to cities, townships, counties themselves at a much lower rate than we might going out to a private consultant.
Okay.
Did we do any kind of a red line comparison between this contract and the previous one?
I did not check the other contract. I didn't see anything that was that other than the part in the resolution I changed from their typical resolution. I didn't see anything that we have to agree to have. Either we have to agree to do work for MnDOT, or they have to agree to do work for us.
Right, there's still a decision.
Yeah. And there is also a chart of the items in which they typically would include in there.
And I just wanted to confirm that this was just the reason it expired, it was just an oversight, we just let it expire, there was or was there a reason why we wanted it to expire?
There wasn't a reason we wanted it to to expire. I don't think we knew that it expired
Exactly.
until
was my
we just got
question.
an email last June.
Yeah, well, the last state aid project we would have done would have been Highland Road, I believe.
2011.
That was,
2012.
yeah, I was in that 2012 period, so we probably just haven't used MinDOT until this most recent one with Halstead, where then they said, oh.
It would have been a little simpler if we right away we started this project, they said, well, by the way, this contract had expired, but, they did work for us, and as I understand, they also invoiced the city for work they did in 2017, for a contract that expired in 2013.
Okay. All right. Moving along then is, does the council want to approve the partnership contract with the Minnesota Department of Transportation with the amendment as Mr. Hornby read?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion has been made by Ms. Bruce and seconded by Mr. Molitor to approve the contract as with the amendment as Mr. Hornby read to us. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. And then next one is accept quote and authorize expenditure for irrigation systems.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, as part of our land acquisition for Halstead Drive, we did have a couple of properties that were impacted more than others, and this is one in particular that had an irrigation system. At 7515 Halstead Drive, they had we had to redo the driveway because we ended up having to raise the road and widen the road. It would have significantly impacted their driveway slope. So we ended up having to rebuild their driveway, and this house does sit down quite a ways, and there was a bit of a fill slope. The road is quite a bit lower than the roadway is. And with that fill slope, their irrigation system was damaged. And working with the property owner from the new driveway, he used to have irrigation on both sides of the driveway. He said he doesn't need it on the west side of the driveway. He had a hose spigot he wanted to remain on the west side of the driveway, but wanted to restore the irrigation on the east side. And so what we did is he has a irrigation contractor that installed the system, maintains the system, and he wanted that irrigation company to do the work. They know the system rather than have somebody else come in and not really know the system. And I think it's not an unusual request. We get that off him. I think we had one on Tuxedo Road. We did something very similar to. The quote from his vendor is $3,860. It includes 2 bores under the driveway and 10 heads along with the piping to restore the zones. And from an engineering standpoint, I think that for the size of the system needs to be restored. I don't know if any of you have seen that property, but there was quite an impact on the property with this new driveway. I think that it seems reasonable. Staff does recommend council approve. Keep using my resolution numbers.
3860.
Resolution 112-18 to accept the quote and authorize expenditure for the irrigation system repair as part of the Halstead Drive land acquisition improvements.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion has been made by Ms. Bruce and seconded by Mr. Tschumperlin to authorize the expenditure of $3,860 for the irrigation system repair on Halstead Drive. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. We have to take a 5-minute break because we have to switch tapes. So then we're going to come back and have the discussion on the motorized golf carts. We're ready to go, so we will continue with our meeting, and our next item is discuss ordinance number 454, regulating the use of motorized golf carts within the city. So just real quick, as a background, this was a land use application that came in from Paul Robinson, the developer, one of the developers at Woodland Cove, requesting that the council consider an ordinance to allow golf carts. That's why it came to the council, and we discussed this at our last meeting, and we thought that it would be good to bring this back, not because of an ordinance, because it was an ordinance, but because typically we would allow the applicant to be present to speak on behalf of the application, and I think I think it would be good to give Mr. Robinson that opportunity. Also, we do have a couple of people signed up that wanted to speak, and I said that they could speak during this time. So at this time, what I'm going to do is just hand it over to Mr. Robinson, if you would like to come and address the council, and then after that, we can have the gentleman that signed up too.
All right. So Paul Robinson with Woodland Cove LLC. Thanks this evening for letting me address you on this topic. And I'm sorry I didn't make the last meeting. I didn't mean to make you duplicate or double up on this discussion. So just to kind of think back a little bit about kind of where we are today and why we're here. 4 years ago we started Woodland Cove, right? And so we've been selling units over the last 4 years. Along the way, some people have bought golf carts, some people haven't. There's not a lot of golf carts because in our disclosures we provide, we tell people that golf carts aren't legally allowed on the public streets in Minnetrista. So every person who buys a lot in there gets that disclosure, signs it, understands it. And so, we had done a project before this where we tried to get golf carts legally approved, and we couldn't because the state statute didn't allow it. And so then recently the state statute changed to allowing cities to pass an ordinance legally or formally allowing golf carts to be on the street. And so at our update, the update I gave kind of this spring, I said, hey, this ordinance has changed. We'd like you guys to consider the idea of allowing golf carts legally or permitting golf carts on the city streets. And so at that meeting, I was directed at that point to meet with the police chief to see if, from a public safety standpoint, there would be an ordinance that they could accept. And so I did that. We met. And then I was directed the next step was to apply for the ordinance and then to, put together, pay for, and then we would agree to pay for the development of the ordinance. Knowing that this wasn't a done deal, this wasn't something that was, we knew for sure this was a risk on our part to go this route. But we thought I guess I read the tea leaves that we had a little bit of a chance, and it seemed like it was worthwhile. So, and so that's what we did. So we asked the staff to put together an ordinance because I do have a lot of residents. They're not here tonight, but I have talked to a number of them. I'm glad they didn't come tonight. But there are people who have golf carts out there right now. There are people who want golf carts to be able to go to the clubhouse, to be able to go down to the docks. It's kind of a resort feeling kind of neighborhood, and it's sort of it's kind of part of the way that people would like to live out there. If people know up front they can do it, then there are decisions people make. They decide to buy a nice golf cart, or they decide to make room in their garage for a golf cart, and those are kinds of decisions that people like to make as they're sort of building their house rather than after the fact. And so I'm just trying to. This seemed like a preemptive way, or like a way to find a way to make it legal in the neighborhood to have golf carts. Because right now, for me, as when I sell a home site as a realtor, as a professional, I have to tell them legally, disclose, here, sign this, you cannot have golf carts on the road. And so it's hard for me to constantly say, you can't have golf carts, but maybe, right now, at least the city doesn't enforce it, and so you can use your golf cart. But for a lot of people, then it's like, well, when are they going to start to enforce it? And why, is this something I can use forever, or is it just for a little while? And so it starts to play a role in their decisions. And so that's why we're here. That's why we're looking at it. I guess I treat this as a concept ordinance, and we're trying to explore this concept with you. And if you like it, it seems like something. Let's figure out a way to make it work. We weren't after trying to create any new bureaucracy for this. Would we rather it just be like bless the golf carts and be done? Yes, so we would like it not to be a big process, but I think the state statute really only gives us this alternative, which is to create an ordinance and have a process. And so that's why we did this.
Okay, thank you. So we have someone signed up, and that is Aaron Franks,
yeah.
Okay. So just state your name and address for the record.
Yep, my name's Aaron Franks, 54
470 Yellowstone, Palmer Point development. So likewise, we have a neighborhood that is a little bit smaller than the Woodland Cove, but very similar in nature, that people like to take the golf carts to the pool and the beach and whatnot. So when I heard that this was going to be on the agenda, although not knowing that it was part of an ordinance, and you have to forgive me, this is my first time ever at a council meeting, so I didn't really know the procedure, but I thought it would be worthwhile to come and either voice an opinion or be able to answer questions. I was a former president of our HOA board, so I do have a sense of what the neighborhood is asking for, and I know that there are a number of people that are also in favor of that. So, I don't really have a whole lot more to add that hasn't already been discussed, but that's really why I'm here and hoping to be a part of the process.
Well, just a question for you then. If you kind of have a thumb on the neighborhood, would they be in favor of an ordinance, even if they had to get it permitted? So there might be a permitting fee and a permitting process?
I think generally yes. People do want the golf carts. They do want, obviously, a legal way to have them. There's some that already do exist, but I think generally people want to follow the rules and not have to be hassled and just be able to enjoy the city. And we all feel that having the golf cart friendly neighborhoods also add to the value of the neighborhood and the sellability of the homes and as that turns over. So I think we're all in favor of that. Obviously, I don't know what that permitting process might be. So
we don't know yet either, if that, yeah.
But speaking for myself, then that would I certainly would not be against anything like that, especially if we're on the right side of the rules.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Mr. Damian Young, did you want to say anything?
Damian Young, 4740 Palmer Court, neighbors of Barone, Mayor, Council. I'd like to just basically concur with Aaron. I'm his neighbor, 3 doors down, and I don't own a golf court, but as many times I've ridden on his golf court or the neighbor next door. And I would concur with what he said about the pulse of the community, where I would say about a third of the homes in Palm Court own golf carts. And I think the cost of a license and them knowing that they're doing something legal instead of questionable would be worth it to the neighbors that I have. And when our kids get older, we would like to be able to get a golf cart legally and not have to worry about whether it's legal or what are the rules, and just to have a clear guideline will be, I think, a positive direction for the city. The other thing I want to add is that this did come before the planning commission. We had robust discussion, and I believe that was approved. And our recommendation was to approve the ordinance and conditions.
Okay.
Just wanted to add that. Any other questions?
Do you have any idea how many, just in your communities, you were talking a dozen, 20?
So we have about 48 homes in our community.
54.
54 total with a point?
Not including the point.
Not with a point. Yeah.
I would say there's at least 20 or so golf carts in that community. And just for full disclosure, we have had in the last 5 years maybe 2 calls, where either an officer had come to and typically what you'll see is there's some confusion or somebody had mentioned, hey, well, is that legal or is it not legal? But for the most part, from the people that I've heard that actually complained, they just want to know that there is a person, there's an age limit, that there's clear guidance on what they're supposed to be doing. Again,
what the rules are.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
So that it's more or less they just want clarity. And I don't think a license is so much an issue in that community or other communities that are going to be buying it's usually a luxury thing, so if they're gonna spend $5,000 or $10,000 for a golf cart, they're probably okay with a few dollars for a license, so that would be my take.
Okay.
To answer your question about 20 or so golf carts.
Thank you.
maybe.
So the planning commission actually voted on this?
Yes, we had to have a robust discussion. I'm surprised it didn't, note one of it came forward.
Yeah,
It's
there's
a-
a
Well,
reason.
maybe you want
It's
to
a
chime in,
land
you were
use.
at the meeting, weren't you?
They didn't vote on it, though. No, I
They made a
briefed-
recommendation.
I
We made a
briefed the
recommendation.
planning commission. I just want to make sure that it's clear that the planning commission did not vote on supporting this or not. There were questions about a golf cart ordinance, but there was no vote taken on it. The commission did not vote on it, because I was there.
I could have sworn that we took it
No,
up.
they did not.
Okay, I'd have to review that. I'm pretty sure that we all,
You could read the minutes,
decided-
there was no
So
vote.
we have to do that. But the tone I recall in the meeting was that we were all, or more or less, more people were.
And I'm not sure how you got that tone, because I was there and there was no consensus. I was talking and I briefed the commission that this matter was coming up and the date that it was coming up, and I wouldn't call it a robust discussion. So I think it's misrepresenting the
That's
fact
absolutely
that the planning commission is in support of this, because it clearly is not.
Well, you can't say it's not either.
Well, you clearly cannot say that they are.
Now they're colleagues, so I mean, either way, I mean, that was your perspective, and that's obviously respected.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, not right now, I don't think. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, you weren't there, so at our last
I just
meeting.
want to make a note, I did watch it on video.
Oh, okay.
So I did get up to
Okay,
speed.
so you're kind of up to speed, all right. So, this is, Mr. Batty, did you want to?
Sure, Madam Mayor, Council. We had a long discussion last time, as everybody knows. I think it got a little bit confusing. So what I wanted to do was try to frame the discussion so that we can kind of talk about what the issues are tonight. And it kind of follows up on some of the comments that Paul made. The statute allows the city or a city to authorize golf carts on its streets. But to do so, you have to do it by ordinance. You have to require a permit, which can't be issued for any longer than 3 years. You can do it for shorter, but it can't be any longer than 3 years. The city has to designate the roadways on which the golf carts can be operated. You have to figure out what the permit form is going to look like. You need to require insurance. They can only operate during daytime unless they've got original lights and other equipment. They have to display a slow-moving vehicle symbol. All of those things are required. In addition, you can require a doctor's note saying that the operator is capable of operating it, or add other things not inconsistent with that list. So the point is, if you're going to affirmatively approve them, that's the package of things that has to be done. The alternatives are to prohibit them or to leave them in what I would call some sort of no man's land. The statute simply says that cities can permit them if they want under the conditions that I've outlined. The question that arises under the statute is, well, what if you don't permit them? What is their status? And I think there's some confusion, partly because of the League of Minnesota Cities has some material which suggests that if they're not permitted, they are then prohibited. I don't agree with that analysis. But focusing on Minnetrista, they are prohibited, not because of the statute, but because of our ordinance. We've created a definition of recreational vehicles, which isn't a statutory definition. It's one that the city has come up with, which arguably includes golf carts. And that definition, or the ordinance, specifically says that recreational vehicles are prohibited.
And so that's why the police have taken the position, and Paul Walls mentioned this repeatedly at the last meeting, that in Minnetrista, because of the ordinance, that golf carts are prohibited. So I think the three positions that the council can take is either permit them with all the conditions that I mentioned, leave the ordinance the way it is, which prohibits them, or the alternative would be to move them into what I would call sort of a no man's land. If you're not going to permit them, take them out of the prohibited category and let them fall where they do under the statute, neither permitted nor prohibited. I think if you like the status quo, I think that's a better solution than leaving them prohibited, because I think currently the police are in a bad position when something is explicitly prohibited and yet they're told to ignore it.
So how would you go about that third option?
The third option would be this very simple. You would simply add a sentence to the definition of recreational vehicles that it does not include motorized golf carts.
Okay.
But then it would not have anything saying you have to be of this age or.
Right.
It wouldn't have the rules, if you will,
Right.
that,
They would not be permitted, and you heard at least a couple of people speak about some people's desire to know that they are permitted. This would put them again in kind of a middle ground where it's not prohibited nor permitted.
I'm sorry, Paul, can you weigh in on that third option in the perspective of the police officer?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council. As Mr. Batty said, I think, in my opinion, I think you all know my opinion. I think this is something that has been going on in our community, not just in these two neighborhoods, but other neighborhoods as well. So it would be my recommendation that we permit the use of golf carts, simply because it's already happening, and I think this is a growing trend, and that really puts us in the best position to deal with this issue. With that said, if we put them into the neutral zone, if you will, by excluding them from our current definition, what that does is, I guess, it puts us in a better position, because we're not just looking at something that we know is a blatant violation of our ordinance and ignoring it. It just simply doesn't apply. That doesn't mean then that we couldn't enforce someone who's driving that in a reckless manner, running through stop signs, things of that nature. Those are violations in and of themselves. So we could still address those types of things. But it doesn't really fix the problem or the requests that we get when people call and say, hey, can we operate these things? Well, it's not prohibited, but we don't permit them. So they're kind of left to draw their own conclusion. So I don't think, while that's better than what we're operating under currently, it doesn't entirely address the issue. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, do you think, though, it's important to have those restrictions, such as an age thing, do for safety reasons? Is that important?
Yes, I do believe that's important, and I think if this is going to happen anyway, it's essentially like steering the ship. We can let it drive itself, which is what it's going to do, or we can have some control over it and try and steer that thing in the direction we think best fits the city. And I think by permitting them, we can require a valid driver's license. We can require insurance and a couple of safety items that it would be necessary to make it, I guess, as safe as possible. So I do think that's the best choice.
So the reason this is before the council is because this developer has requested an ordinance. This isn't before the council for any safety reasons that are coming before the council. In fact, I've heard that we don't get complaints about golf carts, that there aren't a lot of safety concerns or complaints out there. So the reason this is before us is because this developer has requested an ordinance. So I just want to make it clear that it's not for safety reasons that we're talking about this. And whenever I think about an ordinance, whether it needs to happen or not, there are a lot of questions, but two of them are we solving a real problem that is there or not? And also, is this ordinance going to benefit our residents? And when I think about the first question, is this a real problem that we're solving? I don't see a real problem. I see an issue for the developer, and I can understand why the developer wants to have legal golf carts. But we do illegal things all the time. I mean, driving 1 mile an hour over the speed limit is illegal. So people do illegal things all the time. That shouldn't be the reason we're doing this. And when I ask who benefits from it, my biggest concern is all the people with golf carts are going to have to trudge down to City Hall and get a permit, and we're going to have to hire people to manage the forms and keep track of the permitting process and all of that.
Wait a minute, we don't have to hire somebody.
Let me finish. And I know they say that those costs are going to be covered by the permit fees, but I don't see a benefit to our community at large by doing this. And I do see a benefit to public safety. I think it would help them deal with the issues that they have to deal with and not be so awkward. But I like the third option because it doesn't prohibit it and it doesn't permit them. And it would allow people to continue using golf carts as they have been for decades. And I don't think there's any question that that's been going on. And I know there are legal requirements for disclosing that they're illegal, but with this option, you wouldn't have to disclose that they're illegal because they wouldn't be prohibited. So that would take care of the disclosure on your part. And I don't think passing an ordinance is going to change any behavior. Passing this ordinance isn't going to change anyone's behavior. In fact, I doubt whether people are even going to come register their golf carts. And I doubt we're going to get the permitting fees. I mean, we also require licenses for dogs, and we've got a very low compliance rate for dog licenses. And so I don't see that money coming in to pay for anything. And I just don't see that this is necessary. I think it's unnecessary, and if there's a quick way that we can just modify our ordinance and put this in a neutral zone where the developer's happy and golf cart owners are happy and we don't add a layer of bureaucracy, I think that's a great solution.
Ms. Mortenson?
I didn't realize that there was a third option when I was listening to the video. It was really, 1 and 2. However, there is something that really bothers me about this. And with the ordinance we have right now, they are illegal. And our police officers right now are being told to turn an eye and ignore somebody being illegal. When we do ordinances, it's like telling people we're going to pass an ordinance, but as long as you don't get caught, it's okay. The whole illegal thing bugs me, and I think we're putting the officers in a very bad position. I don't mind the option 3. However, if it is a safety issue, nobody would know better than Paul. He's out in the streets and he knows, how important something like that would be. So I would take his opinion on that.
Well, a couple questions maybe, Chief, you could answer. Councilmember Bruce mentioned that the permitting process might be difficult. It might be, people would have to go down to City Hall and apply, and it would take somebody time to create the form, and then it would take another person to collect the forms and so on. Can you maybe walk us through a little bit some of those questions? How could they apply online? Would that be an option? How much time would it take to create a form? I understand the bureaucracy issue that Ms. Bruce has, and if that could be minimized, is that an option?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, good questions, and I do respect the fact that we don't want to create a lot of work for city staff. With that said, I'll compare it to the mini truck permit process. Granted, we have one of those. It's not a lot. However, that process is very, very minor. It's very similar in nature. There's a form, proof of insurance, things like that. So this is not a time-consuming process. The form exists for a mini truck. We could convert that or renovate it, revise it for golf carts, put the appropriate items on there. It's a checklist. They provide proof of insurance, which gets attached to the report. We get a name and so on and so forth. The permit fee would probably be exactly the same, which is $25 for a mini truck. So I would imagine it would, I like consistency. We don't have to decide on the amount right now, but that would likely be a very fair amount.
That's over 3 years?
Or, yeah, we can
I'm sorry.
say 3
It's a
years.
3-year permit for $25?
Right.
Well, the mini truck is currently an annual permit,
Okay.
is how that ordinance is.
But we can make it.
I would,
like,
I would guess there's gonna be far more golf cart permits because there's a lot more people that have them and are using them. And so I would recommend the 3-year process, so we're not doing it every year. And I think another point I'd just like to make now that we're, based on the comments I heard, is that yes, we did get to this point tonight because a developer brought this forward. However, I have heard this question from residents time and time again. It's not just the developer. The developer was I guess, kind enough to pay for the legal side of this, which has been a hurdle, I guess, to date. And so that's kind of the developer piece. But I don't want to ignore tonight, we have 3 people in the audience, 2 of which don't even live in that development. And so that's one example of another neighborhood completely unrelated to Woodland Cove that have been asking for this and have kind of been operating that way. And I know that there is a neutral option, but that doesn't necessarily address the requests of the residents. I think most people like to know they're doing it right. They like to call and say, yes, I can do it, or no, I can't, and they make decisions based on that. I certainly wouldn't go spend $5,000 to $10,000 on a golf cart if I thought it was up to chance. So that's, I guess, just my opinion. But did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Well then, Mr. Robinson, I have a question for you. So from a legal standpoint or from a realtor standpoint, if this was neutral, and people come to Woodland Cove and say, we want to buy here, but our golf cart's legal, what is your response then, and does that help you?
I think I would actually type it up exactly the way Councilmember Bruce talked about it. I mean, that it's basically they're not prohibited, but they're not specifically allowed. So you do run some risk, but and I would let them know that there's currently they're not prohibited. So I would say that I can't say there's no risk. But there's some risk. So I mean, it's an alternative that we could live with, honestly. But I'll just say one of the calls that I got on this from a resident. I wish some of our residents would have showed up because they actually had a variety of opinions, and there were some people that were concerned about it. Actually, they didn't want the permit initially, but then because they were worried that there'd be too many golf carts, and that other people would be decide they want a golf cart because they could permit it. But the example she gave me was that there was a 12-year-old kid driving in the neighborhood and almost ran her over with their stroller. And I said, well, if you don't permit it, like if we don't have a process in place, that 12-year-old is just like a 16-year-old or a 19-year-old or a 22-year-old. There's nothing that says that 12-year-old's any worse off than somebody else. The ordinance that we're proposing would have at 14 and under are not allowed to do golf carts. So police could show up. It wouldn't be that everybody who has a golf cart is bad. It's just the one person. They might lose the permit for their golf cart. But there's a way to regulate it. There's a way to just keep it in check without it being a bigger, wide, area-wide problem. So maybe more than you want to know. But that was just another example.
All right. Okay.
Speaking to that age issue, I believe in our last meeting we had that specific discussion, and I don't see the language change here, but obviously we didn't vote on this, and I don't want to abuse the word consensus, but I thought we kind of came to a quasi-conclusion that we would require all operators to have a driver's license. Okay, I'm saying head nods. Okay.
Yeah.
So you would
Probably did, but they probably didn't change it because there was no consensus.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Council, I specifically and purposely did not change the ordinance because I didn't want to be presumptuous as to what you were going to do.
Okay.
I wanted to have this discussion, but you're absolutely right. That was one of the decisions the council made, that if you're going to permit them, it would have to be with a license.
Okay, I just didn't want to lose sight of that. All right, thank you.
We also said we didn't think that they needed to supply approval, psychological approval or whatever that was. We just said,
I do have one other question. There are a lot of people, my parents being one, that live in Minnetrista that have a golf cart. They would never drive on the city street, ever. Would we be able to put it in the ordinance that it would be just if you drive on the city streets? I mean, it would be silly for somebody like my parents to have to get a permit when they aren't going to be on the city streets.
I think your question is, do you need a permit if you're not going to drive on city streets?
Yes.
Is that how I understand it?
Yes.
And the answer to that would be no.
No. Okay.
We can only permit something that would be operated on city property. So
Okay.
in their case, if it's on private property, absolutely not necessary.
Got it. Okay.
okay.
So I did I keep in touch with constituents via the Minnetrista governance blog, and I think everybody knows I blog on that about city council matters. And I did an informal poll on Facebook to residents that read the blog, and it came back 2-1. Residents are opposed to a golf cart ordinance that would change our current ordinance. I don't think that they would be opposed to putting it in a neutral zone. But when I see those kind of numbers come back, because I specifically asked the question, and I imagine people here saw the poll, that 67% of respondents said no, they didn't want a golf cart ordinance.
I thought your blog said, do you want to pay for a permit?
No, do you want golf cart, do you want to pass an ordinance that would allow golf carts to be permitted on city streets by regulation and permit? I don't remember I can look up the exact wording if you'd like me to.
I would.
But
I would
Yeah,
just-
I would,
I think
yeah.
it said,
It
I
would
looked
be
at it this
interesting.
morning.
it says, should Minnetrista pass an ordinance that requires golf cart owners to pay for a permit to operate on city streets? That was the question.
It's just about paying for the permit.
And they would have to do that if we pass the ordinance.
You didn't put a
Is that-
dollar amount or the number of years? You didn't
No.
put in any safety restrictions or concerns?
No.
I think the blog just didn't state enough information for them to even make a rational decision.
No, there was a previous blog post that went into elaborate detail on our discussion here at City Council the night before. Anybody that reads the blog had access right next to this post. They could have read the other post that was very detailed.
That may be, but let's just look at the facts. One, obviously, this was a unofficial, what is it called?
It's how I keep in touch with constituents.
I understand,
And I
but-
clicked on a lot of the people that responded,
Right.
and every single one that I clicked on was from Minnetrista.
Sure. And I understand. I'm just saying it's an unofficial poll. It's a very narrow. It's people that follow your blog, so it's not a random selection. So I mean, again, you're right. It's a poll, but it's unofficial, and it's probably not statistically.
I didn't say it was statistically
Accurate.
valid, but
Right.
I think
Valid,
council
right.
members have
Sure.
talked about talking to neighbors and things
Sure.
like that, and brought those
Yeah.
opinions to council
Okay,
before.
I
And
understand
this is
that,
not to
and
be discredited
I don't,
because
I didn't
of
discredit that. I'm
Yes,
just
you
saying
did.
it's not a valid statistical
You would
poll.
never have said
So
that.
let me finish,
Yes.
let me finish, please. So we're talking about a number of different things, and one, if it's the neutral zone route that we go, then it's not permitted, but there's also some safety issues that aren't addressed. Whether that's, and that is, I think, something that we should be looking at. I would be in favor of an ordinance if every city street was included, so it's all city streets, and if the application process can be very simple, very easy, and also inexpensive, so the 3-year, it would have to be the 3-year, $25 or less, no psychological requirement, licensing, they have to be a licensed driver, Or, see, here's it, the only thing that I would say is there has to be an age, because there are some people that are over 16 that don't have driver's license, maybe 24, 21, even, I mean, seriously, there are people that are older that don't have driver's license, so you might want to put an age in there. You might want to say a valid driver's license or over the age of 18, for instance.
Why would you allow that?
Because there's for instance, if you can ride a snowmobile without a valid driver's license, if you're over a certain age, so why wouldn't you?
I'll tell you why you wouldn't want to do that. Because if you had your driver's license revoked for your 5th DWI, do you really want them driving down the road with a golf cart? I don't.
Well,
That's
no,
why we revoked the
okay,
license.
point made, point made. So what do you do about the people that are respectable, honest individuals that just don't want to get a driver's license?
Then don't drive your golf cart.
Okay, all right.
Get on your bike. You know, I can't solve all your problems. I guess I just don't. I think it's such a minute, remote possibility that we can't legislate.
Sure. Okay, fine. That's fine. Then, and then that's kind of where I'm coming from. I think it's right now, and when you think of Minnetrista, yes, a large portion of our community is in the rural area, agricultural area, and it may not even apply to them, but what's happening and what we're seeing it in Orchard Cove, we're seeing it in Woodland Cove, we're seeing it at Palmer Point. We're seeing where these communities have golf carts, and I think rather than being reactive, it's better to be proactive and address these issues before they become an issue, before they become a problem. And if we permit them, then we can regulate them a little better, and we can have, and we don't have to be, like Mr. Molitor said, okay, fine, we don't get into the real weeds of it, but we just have something in place that says to our residents, if you have a license, if you're operating appropriately, then you can do this. I think that's a better route than just saying it's neutral, we're not going to do anything. That's my opinion, and that's where I'm coming from.
Any neighboring cities have a golf cart ordinance that you're aware of?
I know there are a few. I think Wayzata is one of them, although their usage might be a bit different because they have a lot of commercial space.
Okay.
That would be the closest one that I'm aware of. There are a number of them around the state, but not right next door.
I did a random internet, so I'm sure I missed a lot, and depending on what your wordage is on your search engine, but I saw 11 very quickly, the closest one being Prior Lake. And of course, in all of those, it was the ordinance itself. It didn't define why the ordinance was created, why it was asked for, what the city felt the need was for. But almost all of them were, a high majority of them were, some of them, they could only operate on streets under a certain speed limit, the street itself, so they couldn't be out on a 60-mile-an-hour city street if there was such a thing. Driver's license was required. Most of them were annual fees. Some of them were longer. But yeah, there was 11, and again, that I found. Ramsey, Prior Lake, otherwise most of them were outstate. Breezy Point, that made sense to me why Breezy Point would have it. But Fairbolt's got it, Zumbrota, some cities that aren't real big had it as well. So it does exist, but I just couldn't find anything right around the lake here.
Did you happen to find what fee structures look like?
No, didn't. I didn't drill down that far, probably. I was just looking to see what, within our state, is there a lot of that out there?
So whenever you regulate something, there are always unintended consequences. There just always are. So what happens, my neighbor lives in Independence, just on the other side of 26, and has a golf cart, and they drive they live in Independence and they drive their golf cart down Game Farm North, across 26 onto Game Farm, and now they're on a Minnetrista city street. Are they required to buy a permit and permit their golf cart to go down to Little Long Lake like they've done for the last 10 years?
Interesting.
Madam Mayor, members of council, that would technically be a violation if they don't have a permit. So the ordinance will spell that out. If you don't have a permit, then that would be a violation.
And that's why I think this ordinance is unnecessary. Things have been working fine for all the people that have golf carts. They've been able to use them. We haven't had any safety concerns. And I think we always will find unintended consequences when we try to regulate something. And this is just one thing. And I guarantee you're going to find a lot more once this ordinance is passed. And you're going to have people angry about it, and they're not going to come down to City Hall and purchase the permits, and we're not going to have the money to run the permitting process. So I'm adamantly opposed to this.
Can I ask Erin and Damon a question?
Sure.
Being you're close to the situation in your neighborhood, would your neighborhood be opposed to having to buy a permit and the things that we've kind of outlined here?
I obviously can't speak for everybody, but I do believe that the majority of people that either own golf carts or would like to own golf carts would be in favor of the permitting process. I also think that the neutral option would be an acceptable solution as well. I think the most important thing is having some clarity and being able to do something that people are already doing safely. It's reducing the amount of car traffic on our roads, at least, just to get down to the lake when
Sure.
the blocks there, which I think makes auto traffic safer for the pedestrians as well as more enjoyable. So it's really about just trying to be within the community. We're not going to take them out on Highway 7. That is
Actually, that would be illegal.
well, certainly, but
I think state troopers might kind of.
But that's not the point. It's really about being part of that small community and using it there responsibly and safely.
I can say that I disagree with as Bruce said about safety. It is a safety issue. You have people going out, if something happens where a mailbox gets damaged by a golf cart or a vehicle's coming down the road, the problem that we have is we will have these younger kids that want to come down to the lake that don't live in the neighborhood and they're flying 50 miles an hour down the road. And you have Aaron with his two beautiful kids and his wife in a golf cart driving at a reasonable rate on the side lane, and something were to happen, it's a safety issue. So, to see, I personally would like to see there be something, I'd like to see the council take an actual stand on something and say, this is okay, instead of leaving citizens out there in limbo, not knowing if it's okay, with, like the officer said, making a $5,000 or $10,000 investment, just saying, is this kind of legal? I don't know. It's just not, it doesn't make sense to me as a citizen, and I'm pretty sure about 99% of my neighbors would want to do something that's legal. They do not want to do anything that's legal, for the most part, personally. And I came here in support of Aaron because I'm a non-golf owner, and I wanted to get a perspective in our neighborhood from a person that didn't own a golf court and a person that did own a golf cart. I'm telling you, it's pretty supportive on both ends from our neighborhood standpoint. Again, I can't speak to anybody that didn't show up here because they obviously knew it was on I posted this on our Facebook. Didn't hear any negative blogs about it or any negative comments about it. So, and I made it extremely vocal. It was discussed at our last
our last board meeting, HOA board meeting suggested that someone would show up and that if we're able to get in front of the city council that we show support, and that was approved board minutes by our HOA. And I know that doesn't necessarily mean anything official, but it certainly shows one small section of the city where there is pretty announced support from a community, albeit a small one, but.
Yeah.
And I think it's presumptuous to speak on behalf of people that you haven't spoken to and to make statements that 99% of golf cart owners would be in favor of this when you haven't spoken to those people. No, I think that's hyperbole and it doesn't belong here.
In my community, that's what I'm speaking to, because I know every single neighbors.
I can guarantee
Well, I don't think we need,
99%
Ms.
of
Bruce,
golf
Ms.
cart
Bruce, we
owners
don't
would
need to,
not support
Ms. Bruce, this isn't a debate, it's not an argument. We're here to listen to our residents.
And I think this
And-
is a
and-
council meeting.
and-
we're past the public hearing stage of this meeting.
Ms. Bruce, you're out of order right now, okay? So a question was asked of them by a council member, they responded. So we're not debating their response. Thank you for your comments, we appreciate it. We don't have to debate it. So here we are. I don't want to belabor this point too much longer. It's getting late. What is your pleasure? Do we have, I know you're opposed to it, Mr. Trump?
I would like to make a motion to approve the neutral zone as it was described by Mr. Batty.
Before we go there, please, is there a way of polling our residents?
Well, certainly you can do a poll, but fortunately, we're here, we sit here, okay, not you, but we were elected to represent our viewpoints and our opinions and make decisions. And so if we go out to the residents every single time and poll them for every decision, that can be somewhat labor intensive.
I recognize that, but
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
this is kind of that gray area that's not so gray on some other things.
Right, that's
My
true.
neighbor, I mean, I can speak for one neighbor who has a golf cart. I specifically went and talked to him about it, and he didn't care either way.
Yeah.
To me, that meant even if we put it into play, he probably wouldn't permit it. I don't know, but he said he didn't have any effect on him.
Right.
So,
Well,
Mayor and Council, in the spirit of the conversation, I thought I would just jump in here and make a suggestion. I know there's a motion on the table. I know I haven't had a second yet, but to try to kind of get to a resolution, I know we spent a lot of time talking about this both last meeting and this meeting, and I think we can always take, and I've heard all the arguments, and I guess my direction that I'm going to recommend is maybe go with the neutral option now, with the idea that, if there are things that happen beyond this date, beyond the passage of a neutral option as described by Mr. Batty, you can always readdress this issue in the future. If it does have to come to a permitting process where you charge a fee and go through all the stuff, I don't think it's going to be, what's that?
That was going to be my recommendation.
Yeah, I don't think it's, if anybody on the council is worried about how much time, money, and effort is going to be spent on this, it's going to be minimal. So, we're not looking at this as a money-making thing, and despite the fact that maybe it wasn't raised as a public safety issue, I think there's an aspect to this that's never going to vanish. So, but that being said, I think maybe at this point in time, maybe we should just kind of pursue the neutral option as Mr. Batty suggested, and as Ms. Bruce brought up with a motion, and then kind of go from there. We'll just see what happens. We can certainly kind of continue to monitor that. Maybe Chief Falls can do a job of trying to.
But what we can do is it's not neutral, it's basically
just making it
eliminating
not-
it from our prohibited
The third option, I think I'll call it.
ordinance. So in the ordinance currently, we would have to just remove
Correct.
golf carts from the prohibited
Correct.
section. That makes it neutral, if you will. I was going to recommend that because we can always address this again. And I honestly think we are going to be addressing this again at some point. And this at least is kind of the interim step, if you will. So there is a motion on the table to, maybe Ms. Bruce, you can rephrase your motion.
I'll rephrase it to call it the third option, where we neither prohibit nor permit golf carts.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so I would have worded it to say that we are going to remove golf carts from our from the language prohibiting them on city streets. That would be a little more clear, if you will. We're not saying we're prohibiting them. We're not saying we're doing what you're saying, but I think the direction to staff needs to be that the wording in the ordinance should be removed, or the golf cart should be removed from the ordinance. In other words, deleting them as a prohibited vehicle on the road.
Yes.
Okay, is that
Correct.
second? Good, okay. So they'll bring that back, actually, this will have to be published because it's quotes unquotes a new ordinance, and they'll bring that back for approval, or do you just need to publish it? Or you'll bring it back to publish by title and summary?
We need to bring
Yes,
it back
minute, just
because the draft in front of you is much more extensive than.
Okay, so you'll bring it back?
Yeah, basically everything else is gonna have to be stripped out, and I think the amendment, I'll have to look at it more carefully, but I think it's gonna include just one line.
Right.
Adding a sentence to recreational vehicle.
Correct.
Which says this does not include motorized golf carts.
Okay, so, and that'll come back to us at the next
Yes.
council meeting,
Yes.
and then after that, then we'll have to also do a title and summary, publish it by title and summary.
Depends on how much I can shrink that
Okay.
ordinance down.
All right, all right, thank you. All right, with that, any further questions?
I do
comments?
want to make one more comment. I do appreciate that we are taking this where it is not illegal anymore, because I think that put our officers in such a bad position. And again, if we say we're passing an ordinance and it's illegal, but yet it's okay, I have,
Right.
it goes wrong in my body. So, okay,
All
I do
right.
agree with option 3.
All right, so all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. And now we will move on to staff reports. Our city administrator.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. So the one thing I did include in the packet under my staff report, which I don't generally do, is the approval we received from the on our pay equity implementation report from the Minnesota Management and Budget Office. We submitted that under resolution from the council in January. We made the deadline of January 31st. We did receive notification on July 19th, and so I included that letter saying that we passed every time we've done this. This is on a 3-year cycle, and as far as I know, it's going to stay on a 3-year cycle. So this was our 3-year cycle that ended as of December 31st of last year, 2017. So the next time we'll be doing this, it will be December of 2020, and that will be reported in 2021, January 31st. So just wanted to make that note. And then one other item that I have, I'm trying to grab my handouts. So we did have a chance, send that around. So we did have a chance to meet with Ram Construction representatives. There was 3 of them there.
Might have 2 here.
2 owners and the superintendent of the project. And one of the things, and I'll let Mr. Hornby chime in if he feels like he needs to, but the major stumbling block that we saw as a city was we weren't seeing completion at the end of June. We tried a letter from the engineer's office that sort of worked, and then we kind of amped it up a little bit and had the attorney's office provide a letter that came from them that's saying we need a schedule and we need to know when you're going to be done. I mean, it's been such a labor to get this group out there. So we met on the 31st in the afternoon, 31st of July in the afternoon. I would say it was contentious. We had Mr. Strumman there from Kennedy and Graven, plus city staff and the 3 RAM members. And we just received this schedule that you see in front of you that distributed. I got it at 4 p.m. on Friday, so it was not able to be included in the packet. The packet was long out the door by then. I was frankly surprised I got it, even though they said they'd give it to us. You know, you get to about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday, it's like, okay, where is it? So here it is. Their goal is to be done, it says, by the 24th. My guess is that hopefully they'll be done by the end of August. Probably give them another week. They've got plenty of things to do. Again, the major stumbling block had to do with the roundabout, the mini roundabout. and the specifications that were not met when they poured the concrete circle perimeter, or whatever you call the roundabout itself. And so Mr. Hornby's office has been working with them, resupplied them once again with the specification so that their subcontractor does concrete, can come out and do that. That's kind of the first hurdle, and then, as you can see, that's kind of the first line, removal of the concrete. Then they've got a few other things they have to do and to finish that up. I must tell you that this has been quite an ordeal. I've been in touch, I think I'm on some Christmas card lists, maybe not, from some of the residents, because we've had numerous conversations. I know the mayor's had conversations with the same people. Mr. Hornby has. We're trying to diligently work through all the issues that residents have. I'm to the point now where I tell people I'm in the make our residents happy mode here. And so, one example, we had to tell one resident whose driveway issue was not resolved. He asked us to hold up on something because I don't know if he's having a delivery of something. He's going to have heavy equipment, and he didn't want to have, if we installed his driveway on this schedule, he didn't want to have the paver come in, or his heavy loads come in and then kind of wreck the new pavement. So he asked to delay it, and I said, that's not happening. And we'll figure out something for you. It's been a struggle just to get them out there. I'm not going to push them off just for you. So I said, we'll work with you. We'll figure something out. So you may see, like tonight's bill, a little different circumstances, but you saw from Mr. Sebaski with his irrigation system. There's a handful of residents out there that are not happy with the work that's been done on their current driveway. Mr. Hornby and I, and we'll be working with people in RAM and whoever else we need to do to kind of satisfy their concerns. We got an email, the mayor got an email from another resident that must have had 10 or 12 things on it that they're not happy with. I want to make them happy. This is kind of been a fiasco.
These are
They're
legitimate
like
things. It's
stuff.
not like they're asking for extras.
Right.
This is legitimate things that should have been done.
Should have been done, they're not done. So we're going to work
yeah.
with RAM and try to get them done. If not, figure out another way to get them done so they're happy. Because this is taking far too long. So that's my update. Hopefully RAM will stick to the schedule being provided for us. So
All right.
I don't know if anybody has any questions on that, but I think the light, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully it's not an oncoming train, as they say.
So the inference is that we may end up paying for fixing up some of this?
It could be.
Could that come out of the potential penalties?
Correct.
Okay.
That's the way we're going to be looking at it. So the liquidated damages clock is run every day. They're already past June 30th, 5 weeks past it. So.
Okay.
So it continues to run until they finish it. So then we're just some additional dates from late last year. So.
Any other staff reports? Okay.
I think that's it.
All right. So let's see, real quick. Mound Fire meeting, I went to that Wednesday the 25th. Mr. Barone was there and Ms. Bruce was there as well. The budget for 2019 was rolled out. Our increase will be about $10,000. And this is due in part to the fact that one of the community members will no longer be a member city. And the other reason, too, is the formula is based on partly on market values, and our market values have gone up substantially, and other communities maybe not as much. So it's always part of the formula, which is too bad, but good for our residents that their values have gone up.
And Mayor, I did put that packet of information in the info
Yep,
packet.
so I was going to say that was in our info packet, so you can read through that. I'm not going to go through all of that. Just one FYI, October 3rd, the Mound Fire Department will be having its fire prevention open house at their fire department. That's October 3rd, I think, in the afternoon. As Mr. Barone mentioned, I had several meetings with residents on Halstead regarding the issues out there. And then tomorrow night is the National Night Out. I will be attending a number of parties. Hopefully some of you will be going as well. And I also attended on the 25th of July the National League of Small Cities Dinner in Independence. Mayor Johnson had invited some of the surrounding mayors to attend, and I did that. It was a very interesting and fun night. And that should be it for now.
The WCC meeting, there was not one for July. The next one is coming up on August 23rd, and it is being done at Surfside Bar and Grill, and it is more of a social evening. National Night Out, I am able to go this time, so I'm very excited. And the other thing is, if we are going to be looking at doing the pig races again for Trista Day, I should lock in that date with Gary Dower, the owner of the pig races, and do that probably tonight if I can get the okay and get that in contract to him.
I think it's been a great addition to Trista Days. I know people like it. And it's sponsored by, I think 100% of the cost has always been covered by sponsors, so why would we say no?
Okay, I will do that.
Okay. And that's it?
That's
Okay.
it.
LMCD did not meet last time. We are meeting on Wednesday night, and we will be discussing what we didn't get to previously, which was the fee structure. So
Okay.
that will take up the whole meeting.
Okay.
I went to the planning commission meeting and we just approved the variance that was on our agenda for tonight, and went to the Mount Fire Commission meeting, and that was in your packet, so. That's all.
And the only thing I have is National Night Out. Tomorrow night I will be attending for the first time. Interesting to see where I end up.
Yeah. Just one more note. I don't know if some of you have seen this or not, but I did want to say and extend sympathies to Medina City and City Council and staff over there, as well as to Bob Mitchell's family. Bob Mitchell was the mayor of Medina, and very recently, very suddenly passed away. I knew him. He was part of our Northwest League group, and he came there. I loved his sense of humor. He just had a great sense of humor. He was also just a wonderful person, and sad and sorry for the loss, and also again just kind of extending our sympathy to the Mitchell family as well as to the city of Medina. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0.